lucky enough to be in the building with my dad and my son. 3 generations seeing the first ever playoff hockey game here in Salt Lake, and man, was it a good one. The Mammoth only had 12 shots, and they had 4 goals, taking care of Vegas 4-2, and now we move to tonight. 7:30 drop of the puck or thereabouts. It's going to depend on some games prior to that as far as when the games will finish. And I would say if you can get down there, do everything you possibly can. Now, it's not, possible for everybody. They had a little bit of a watch party kind of situation outside the arena. A lot of people were down there. It was a really cool night. So we'll get into it. We'll talk about the Game 3 victory and preview Game 4 tonight here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Do some NHL playoff hockey on the show. We'll look at some of the other series that are going on right now. And not to look ahead, there's still a lot to do. But if the Mammoth win tonight, a 3-1 series lead is going to be pretty difficult for Vegas to come back from. Now, in the world of the NHL, 3-1 not as insurmountable as it is in the world of the NBA. So we'll get to the Mammoth storylines on the show today. Speaking of the NBA playoffs now inching closer and closer to the final stanza of the first round. Still a lot of basketball left. The Denver Nuggets are going to try to avoid elimination tonight. Rudy Gobert has reminded everybody around the league why, once again, he is a slept-on superstar, future Hall of Famer, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. And Denver is on the ropes tonight against Minnesota, Oklahoma City. You can probably nap through that one, even though they're without J-Dub. They're going to be fine against Phoenix. And a randomly compelling series in the Eastern Conference is Detroit and Orlando, as Orlando is at home tonight trying to take a 3-1 lead over the number 1 seed Detroit Pistons. Of course, Orlando had to traverse the play-in space to get into the tournament, and they are playing some good basketball. Victor Wembanyama made his return, had some very cold words towards the league for the concussion protocol, but the Spurs are back on track. And I think anybody who covers basketball or loves basketball is really hoping that we will see San Antonio and Oklahoma City match up in the Western Conference Finals. In the East, the Celtics so far look by far to be the best team. The Cavs are learning what it's like to play playoff basketball with James Harden. 15 turnovers over his past 2 games. The Cavs had a 2-0 lead against the Raptors, and now that series is deadlocked at 2 games apiece. Joel Embiid made his comeback. Looked pretty good, but not near enough. The Celtics curb stomped the Sixers 128-96 yesterday, and then the Rockets avoided elimination 115-96. May 10th, still a few weeks away. That's the next date of note. Take note. Didn't even mean to do that. For the Utah Jazz, as we will find out their lottery fate on Mother's Day coming up in just a couple of weeks. A really unfortunate story. It feels like it's just a matter of time before things like this happen, and I think we're going to see more of it. But Texas Tech is probably going to have to start their season with the quarterback who was the starting quarterback at Tulsa last year. I'm not going to pretend like I know much about him, because Will Hammond, I know everybody knows that name here in Salt Lake, the backup quarterback for Texas Tech, tore his ACL in October, and Texas Tech, by their own admission, they don't think he's going to be ready until week 3. So Kurt Francis, the hopes of Texas Tech might rely on the shoulders of Kurt Francis. They also have a redshirt freshman on the roster. All of that is to say Brendan Sorsby has entered a rehab facilitation program to treat his gambling addiction. And the details of this go all the way back to his redshirt freshman year at Indiana, where he bet on the Hoosiers to win some games. He's not going to get eligibility. He's just not. And it's sad in a lot of ways. And this kid was reportedly being paid $5 million this year in NIL money to play at Texas Tech. He was the number 1 player in the transfer portal, according to ESPN, after starting at Cincinnati over the past couple of years. And he is probably going to have to turn his attention to the NFL. And a lot of people think he's a first-round kid, first-round draft pick potential. Does today's news change that? We'll get into it. Of course, the NFL draft now behind us. Caleb Lomu is a Patriot. Spencer Fano is a Brown. Logan Fano is a Brown. So we'll tell you where the undrafted players landed, and we'll talk about some of the NFL draft storylines as the draft is now behind us. We'll start things off with a good NFL guest, our buddy Sam Bruckhouse from Sumer Sports. We'll talk some NFL draft with Sam, some offseason stuff as well. Sammy Mora, our friend from Ute Zone, will join us today to talk some Utah football. There is some breaking news. Jason Batacchio of the Salt Lake Tribune is reporting that Utah's director of football sports performance resigned today. Greg Argist was given a promotion earlier this offseason. He's been with the program for 20 years. So we do have some breaking news to talk about as it concerns the Utes. We'll put spring ball behind us. What does the Brendan Sorsby news mean for Utah and BYU and their potential of winning the Big 12? We'll get to all that on the program today. Roxy Bernstein, one of our favorites. We will preview tonight's Mammoth game with Roxy Bernstein on the program today. RSL dropped the result over the weekend to the Galaxy 2-1. It was a rough penalty call late in the game on Sam Junka that allowed, it was Marco Royce who got the brace. He hit a beautiful free kick early on. Looked like Gozo got the goal. I think they actually turned that into an own goal because Gozo hit the post, and then it hit the keeper in the back and went in the net. So RSL now has lost 2 straight matches. So we'll do a little soccer later on in the program as well. Sam Bruckhouse, Sammy Mora, Roxy Bernstein, a potential for an RSL guest. We'll tease that a little bit later on. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, hello. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. And Porter Larson producing the show today. I have one message for you today and one message only, and that is I'm going to make you earn your Uncrustable today. You don't get it right out of the gates. You got to earn it.
I already stole it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I grabbed it already.
Well, okay. Well, you win.
What's the deal?
Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm well. Quite a weekend in the sports world. A bunch of stuff here locally, including, as you mentioned, the NFL draft, playoff hockey in Salt Lake City, which was quite the moment, and some NBA playoffs to get to. So a bunch of interesting stuff. Yeah, you mentioned the Sorsby stuff. Tip of the iceberg when it comes to the gambling and the college kid stuff. We'll see how that plays out. It's interesting. He's apparently didn't bet on any games he was involved in. I still think that it's going to be tough on the NCAA side to stomach that, but we'll see how that all plays out. And I'm sure will be a topic of conversation as we go on.
Yeah, no doubt. So unfortunate news, but ultimately there is some ramifications here that I think affect our local teams. I'm going to bring in Sam Bruckhouse right out of the gates today. But before we get to Sam, courtesy of our good friends at IFA Country Stores, it is time now for your opening tip. All right, here's the deal. IFA Country Stores, with IFA's Weed and Feed, you'll grow strong, healthy, dark green turf without a weed in sight. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move, now at IFA.coop or one of your local IFA stores. You know, when it became apparent, 4 or 5 years ago, and if we're honest, this is a little bit like the NIL stuff. I mean, I can tell you personal stories that I'm very well aware of college football and basketball players being paid thousands and thousands of dollars in the 80s and 90s to play for their college programs. Paying players has always been part of the deal, but now that it's legal, most of the things happen in front of our eyes. Not all of the things, I can guarantee you that, but most of the things, because schools have the ability, if you're a full rev share member, $22 million at your disposal to pay the kids that play sports at your institutions. But this stuff has always been going on, okay? It's not a new thing that players are able to cash in to play for certain schools, whether it's money that is under the table or side deals here. It's always been the deal. And if we're honest, the ability to gamble on sports has always been accessible in one way or the other. But when it became apparent that it was going to be widespread, accepted on a widespread level and legalized pretty much all over the country, and now it is legalized everywhere because the prediction markets have found a loophole for states like ours to continue to operate, you're doing the same thing. If you're placing a bet on a prediction market, you're doing the same thing you would do on a sports book if that was legal here in Utah. They're not. Prediction markets are. So everybody across the landscape of America now has the ability to wager on sports. When you add that to the potential of simply having that access on your cell phone, you have a sports book in your hand at all times. When you add that to what dopamine hits simply do to the brain as a young person is growing and developing into a fully formed human, it's simply inevitable that given access to sports books, prediction markets, whatever it is on your phone, to simply pick up your cell phone, open up the app, deposit $100, and then boom, you're off to the races betting on sports. And what studies show is that a winning sports bet, if you place $100 on the Cowboys, they win that Sunday, the dopamine hit you receive for winning a sports book bet, for winning a bet that you have laid down on a game or a player or a prop or a parlay or whatever, is akin to taking a hit of heroin, which is why this stuff is so dangerous and also so addicting. It does the same thing to your brain chemistry as shooting heroin into your vein. That's the dopamine hit. That's the serotonin hit. That's what everybody's looking for. And there's plenty of ways to get healthy dopamine hits. But if you want it instantaneous, you can shoot heroin into your vein or you can win a sports bet, right? So where we are today with Brendan Sorsby does not surprise me at all. And honestly, and look, we've already seen a bunch of it. Jonte Porter gave up an NBA career for putting prop bets on himself via an intermediary. Chauncey Billups might go to jail. Damon Jones is probably going to jail. Terry Rozier, who has made tens of millions of dollars in the NBA, is now persona non grata. He was released. He's not getting signed again. And it's very easy to sit back and throw stones and judge these people like Terry Rozier. If you've got, $70, $80 million in the bank, why are you putting yourself at risk to place bets on sports when you are generationally rich and you have this unbelievable career playing in the NBA long enough to get a pension and be taken care of for all of your days? And if you handle that money correctly, your kids and their kids will never have to worry about financial stress. So what exactly are we doing here? The conversation beneath all of this is what mental illness and addiction does to judgment, right? That's what this comes down to. Because it's always easy to judge somebody when they do something, say something, or have some sort of action that you don't get from the outside looking in. And then we can look down on them and say, what is wrong with you? You never know what anybody's experience is. And, if you're not right in the head, you're not going to be able to act like yourself. And maybe you say or do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. I don't pretend to know anything about what Brendan Sorsby's motivation is here. But Brendan Sorsby was the starting quarterback at Cincinnati for 2 years, and he was awesome. He was the number one player in the transfer portal, according to ESPN's rankings. He lands at Texas Tech. Texas Tech is coming off a CFP appearance. Texas Tech, once again, had the best transfer portal, not just in the Big 12, but in the country as far as their rankings go. And the reports were Brendan Sorsby was set to make $5 million this year to play quarterback at Texas Tech. Now it is his fifth year of eligibility, and so now with the new things that are have been put into place, this is his last year to play college football. And when you look ahead to the draft, and now we're putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit. You got Arch Manning, you got Dante Moore, you got Sam Levitt, and then you have Brendan Sorsby. He's thought to be like QB 4 or 5 in a draft class next year, where 4 to 5 quarterbacks would be taken in the first round. And Brendan Sorsby's name is on that list. Now, is his pro football future completely over? No. If you've tracked the history of the NFL's, tendency to forgive bad behavior, things that are much worse than this, he'll still have a chance to play pro football. But I would be stunned if Brendan Sorsby is playing college football this year. I don't think he's going to be able to get his eligibility back. The NCAA has been very clear on this. If you are caught gambling on college sports while you're playing college football, you're gone. That's kind of the precedent that has been set. And I would imagine Brendan Sorsby heading into rehab today to address this gambling addiction is probably his last-ditch attempt to show good faith to Texas Tech and the NCAA. Like, look, I'm trying to get a handle on this. Because, again, if you really understand what addiction does to a person, what addiction does to the mind, the most obvious addictions are things that we can see. Most obvious addictions are, things like drugs and alcohol, and ultimately the societal cast of judgment on people that struggle with such things, I think, is really, really gross. This isn't that much different if you understand what addiction does to your brain chemistry. And if Brendan Sorsby had some big wins early on in his gambling career, you're chasing that, right? It's like David Crosby, the way he talks about heroin. There's a great David Crosby documentary, may he rest in peace, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, where he said, the first time I took a hit of heroin, I knew that I was going to chase that for my entire life. And he more or less did. Gambling, winning a sports bet, a big sports bet, does the same thing to your brain as that does. That's why it's such a slippery slope. So I feel bad for the kid. I think it's easy to sit back and say, what an idiot. What are you doing? You're going to make $5 million this year. You sacrificed potentially the final year of your college career. And what will NFL teams view you as now? If you were going to be a first-round pick, are you still going to be drafted? Will you get another chance to play football? And I think that he will. And I hate to end it like this, but there is an undeniable advantage now for Utah and BYU in the Big 12. Texas Tech, their backup quarterback, Will Hammond, the kid who came into Salt Lake City and actually looked awesome, tore his ACL in October. Texas Tech doesn't think he'll be back for at least the first 3 weeks of the season, if not more. They brought in a kid who played quarterback at Tulsa last year as kind of an emergency third option. I don't know anything about him. Kurt Francis is his name. Then they've got a redshirt freshman on the roster. Texas Tech has earned the right to be on their own tier in the Big 12. They've been the class of the Big 12 for the past couple of years. They have the number one recruiting and transfer portal class in the Big 12 and in the country once again. But if they are playing with a backup or a third string quarterback all year, because here's the other thing, with the new loopholes, like Jake Retzlaff last year, when everything got loose at BYU, he was able to circumvent some processes to land and play college football at Tulane last year. You're not allowed to do that anymore. And there's also no more spring transfer portal, meaning Texas Tech is going to have to enter the season with the group they have. They cannot add to that quarterback room. And Brendan Sorsby, if he's not around to play quarterback for Texas Tech, do you really look at them as the favorite to win the conference again next year? Their schedule is a cakewalk, as we've outlined before. They avoid Utah and BYU. The two quote-unquote hardest opponents they have will be in Lubbock. So I hate to turn this into topically what it means for our two Big 12 in-state schools, but unfortunately, it's undeniable that this could benefit Utah and BYU moving forward. Again, want to bottom line this, I feel bad for the kid, and I hope he's able to get the answers he's looking for. And finally, not to get on my soapbox, this legalized gambling thing, where according to The Atlantic, 83% of males in America between the age of 20 and 50 have a sports book app on their phone. This is not going to end well. Nobody gives a rip about a sports talk radio's host in Salt Lake City's opinion on societal issues, but I wasn't surprised by this. And every time another story pops out, I won't be surprised by that either. Do not bet on sports. You work too hard for your money. Keep it in your pocket. Keep it in your bank account. All right, we'll catch a break, but we're going to continue football. Coming up, Sam Bruckhouse stops by from Sumer Sports. Sammy Mora will join us. Roxy Bernstein will join us. We got a jam-packed, busy Monday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700.
field is going to be really interesting for them. And I think he definitely fills a position of need, and they got him at great value.
So you had referenced something early in the interview about maybe some people believing Fernando Mendoza wasn't necessarily a home run in a quarterback-light draft and a team that badly needed one. You understand why the Raiders did what they did. I think I told you this anecdotally. Fernando's second start of his college career, he was at Cal, and it was here in Salt Lake, and I was at the game, and I remember thinking, like, man, this kid stinks. And obviously he was able to turn some things around. What do you make of Mendoza to the Raiders, and do you agree that maybe there's questions about whether or not he's as good as some people think he can be?
Yeah, Mendoza's prospect profile is pretty straightforward, and he certifiably should have been the number one pick. And moreover, he's going to about as good of a coaching situation, at least when it comes to scheme, and a offense that has invested a ton of money in the center, has a good left tackle, and drafted some offensive linemen as well. So he's going into a pretty good situation that I'd liken kind of the Bears 2 years ago with Caleb Williams. But basically what I'll say is that he's really good at two things, which is converting on design runs in big moments, third, fourth down, red zone. And he's really good at knowing when to push the ball down the field and completing back shoulder throws on the perimeter. That's what the data says he's really good at. He struggles with a couple of things. He struggles to get the ball over the middle with pace. I kind of comped him to Jared Goff without the arm strength, but kind of some of the same tendencies to kind of hang in the pocket and get hit, which is his second weakness. He takes a lot of sacks. Now, at Cal, he was trying to make plays. At Indiana, he really didn't have to do all that. They had a lot of talent, a lot of experienced guys, and he still was getting hit despite really not scrambling a ton. And when he felt pressure, he really didn't scramble a ton either. So he's just kind of sitting back there and getting hit. You can't do that at the NFL level. If you're going to get hit, it needs to be on a scramble. It needs to be trying to make a play. So we'll see if he'll be able to develop that. Like I said, the good thing is he's coming into a system that Clint Kubiak basically recharged Derek Carr's career briefly for about a year and kept him in the league as a starting quarterback for another year, and then took Sam Darnold to a Super Bowl. And the reason why is because it has a high usage of play action. They run probably a little bit too much, but when we talked to Clint Kubiak at the Super Bowl, he said the reason why he runs too much is because he wants to protect his quarterbacks and make sure that they can make it through 17 games and the playoffs. And they're going to try to generate explosives with Ashton Genty instead of necessarily making Mendoza make all the plays. So a year one starter, even if he comes in kind of in the middle of the year after Kirk Cousins, it's set up for him to succeed. So certified number one pick, no doubt. I just don't put him on the same tier as the Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams of the world.
57 undrafted players made rosters last year. Logan Fano was not drafted, but he lands in Cleveland with his brother, which is pretty cool. And Lander Barton was not drafted, and he lands with the Chargers. Your thoughts on maybe those two and their potential of making the team? And then just generally speaking, wonder what your take is on the following. When Trevor Riley was drafted, Trevor was drafted, I think, in the 7th round by the Jets. And I sent him a text like, congratulations. And he sent me back. He's like, no, I'm pissed. I didn't want to be drafted. I wanted to choose where I wanted to go, which is a very classic Trevor response. What do you make of that? Would you rather be a 6th or a 7th round pick or go undrafted and choose where you want to go?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And especially as we're in the NIL era, there's been a discussion of whether some of the talent that may have come out but maybe has an extra year will actually come out, given that, you have potential to make $4 or $5 million being one of the best players in college football now. And if scouts don't think your game is going to translate, you probably aren't going to make all that much money and probably not make a roster. So it's kind of a tough decision in that now I think like the evaluation of 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th round picks versus undrafted free agents is probably substantially flatter than it used to be when we were forcing these guys to come out after 4 years. And so there's a real chance someone like Lander Barton, who scouts really, really loved at the Shrine Bowl, our scouts liked him, the analytics are in his favor. He just is an older guy and maybe has some, size and speed concerns. There's a real chance that when his time came in the 5th and 6th rounds, his agent was like, nope, don't want to go here, don't want to go there. We want to figure out where we're going to go so that we can be sure that we make a roster and get a long-term deal rather than potentially being drafted in a situation where I'm just a depth piece and maybe being used as a special teamer and I'm locked up for 4 years. So I do think the situation is substantially different. And that's not even discussing that these guys have had agents for 4 years at this point. Like, they have long-standing relationships rather than a guy just coming in and kind of being tossed to the side as an undrafted free agent. These are guys who have provided income for these agents and probably for smaller agencies are the main earner. So there is a big difference now, and I think we'll continue to see some of these better players. Landon Barton in particular was the one that I was kind of shocked didn't come off the board. That just kind of go undrafted for the reasons of their own rather than actually it being a talent distribution thing.
So Jack Kelly, 6th round, a little bit later, I think, than most people were expecting, and he lands with the Giants. Your thoughts there and your thoughts on his potential to be a long-term pro?
Yeah, pairing Jack Kelly with the pick at the top of Arvell Reese, what's become clear about the Giants is that they are going to utilize these linebackers all over the field. And Jack Kelly did just that. Excellent blitzer last year, had a very, very high pressure rate when he blitzed, and he blitzed pretty much at volume. So I think it's an excellent fit for a team that clearly wants to have a multiple defense with multiple different edge rushers, off-ball linebackers being kind of thrown all over the field and trying to confuse offenses. I think he'll get a shot given what we saw of him at BYU.
So I wanted to – you mind if I ask you a college football question, Sam?
I love college football, as you know, Spence.
I know you do. And
hey, in fact, y'all were playing – in the ads, y'all were playing the band, and I kind of got goosebumps. I think I'm ready for college football, man.
Yeah, man. Look, it's always the sport we look the most forward to, and then we blink and it's gone. So – ultimately, I wanted to kick the tires on this Brendan Sorsby stuff, and that's how we started the show today. And look, this poor kid is going to be judged by everybody left and right. If you really understand what addiction does to brain chemistry, I feel bad for him. When you look at some of the science behind sports betting, if you win a sports bet, the dopamine effect on your brain is the same thing as shooting heroin into your vein. So he obviously got into a bad spot, couldn't get himself out of it. And I hate to make this a topic about what it means for the Big 12, but Texas Tech is going to be without their starting quarterback, and Will Hammond, their backup, who rolled into Salt Lake and played really well, is coming off a torn ACL. And by Texas Tech's own admission, he won't be ready until at least week 3 and maybe more. They brought in, another transfer who played at Tulsa. Don't know much about him. They've got a redshirt freshman on the roster. But Sam, as you know, no spring portal anymore. And there's no more doing what Jake Retzlaff did a year ago to get to your squad, Tulane. They've got to go to the dance with the people that are in that room. What do you think this means for the potential of either Utah or BYU maybe being the new favorite in the Big 12?
Yeah, I think let's just look at it on the merits. First, Brendan Sorsby was the reason that Cincinnati was relevant last year. I mean, that was an excellent offense basically through 8 weeks of the season before they played some more buzzsaw teams, and they kind of figured it out that he was the whole team. And so this is sad that we won't get to see him on a Texas Tech team that, the best team that oil can buy. It's sad that we won't get to see him compete, and hopefully he can shake back and kind of make his way back into the game. As you mentioned, I loved Will Hammond last year. I thought he was an absolute difference maker, but this is a team that relies on transfers, and their whole team basically flipped. 2 of their wide receivers got drafted. Their entire defensive line got drafted, and this very well could be a situation much like we saw at Florida State 2 years ago, where Florida State had, I think, one of the best rosters ever constructed, where they had basically an entire defensive line start in the NFL and be worth a Rookie of the Year vote immediately upon going to the NFL. And I think that could very well be the case with Texas Tech as the house of cards kind of falls down. That being said, NIL is a little bit different now. It's not as variable. You have a better job of, doing your homework and adding multiple guys. So it's very true that Texas Tech, who spends a ton of money on the offensive defensive line. In fact, I was on a scouting job last year in Dallas at a high school game. There was a left tackle at I think a 4 or 5A school that they had just dropped $2.5 million on, who was just 6'7", 295 pounds, 17 years old, coming in as a fresh guy. Maybe they utilize a little bit more of those guys that they're pulling out of the Texas high school system, but overall, sad story, definitely a question mark for Texas Tech. Like, for the youth's sake, I don't want to be like, hopefully, it all works out for them, because that's the main competitor going into next season. But for the purposes of people who love college football, I really hope Will Hammond's able to get healthy early, or I really hope that Brennan Sorsby's able to figure it out.
Well said, Sam. Where can people go find your work, bud?
Yeah, go check us out. Sumer Sports on YouTube. If you just got a guide to your favorite team, we did a show called The Evaluation, where we have little blurbs that you can check out, learning more about them. We covered a lot of guys, from first rounders to undrafted guys. And so go check out The Evaluation. Go watch our Sumer Sports radio draft show. Day 1 was incredible. Day 3, we went through a lot of cool scheduling bits and scouting bits. But SumerSports.com on YouTube is going to be the home of Sumer Sports' analysis, and it's a great place to subscribe.
Thank you, my friend. Keep up the great work. Always appreciate the insight. Be well. We'll chat soon, okay?
My pleasure.
All right, Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports. I'm telling you, they do a phenomenal job. Mike Mayock, for years on the NFL Network, was the best analyst on the draft. Sam's awesome. Lindsay's awesome. Sean Syed joins the show as well. If you're looking for really good in-depth analysis of pro and college football, check out our friends at Sumer Sports. And Sam stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. There's nothing like taking in a game on a sunny afternoon. You can get your field ready this summer with IFA's 4+ lawn care program. It's a blend especially formulated for Utah soils. Get healthy, lush, dark green grass this summer by making your power move today with our good friends at IFA. All right, some breaking news earlier. Our friends at the Salt Lake Tribune, Jason Batakia, is reporting that Utah strength and conditioning coach Greg Argust has resigned. Greg was given a promotion after Morgan took over the program. I don't have any details on any of the backstory, but Sammy Moore is going to join us coming up next from Ute Zone. We'll discuss this story. We'll talk the Ute players that were drafted, put a little bow on spring ball. Going to bring in Roxy Bernstein later on to preview tonight's Mammoth game. We got a busy show. We have 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Drop of the puck tonight about 7:30 or so, depending on how some of the games prior to the Mammoth game goes. Mammoth lead Vegas 2-1 after winning Game 3 on Friday night. Roxy Bernstein, our buddy from the Pac-12 Network days and does a lot of hockey for ESPN, will join us. We'll call that about an hour from now. But some breaking news in the world of Utah football. Utah strength and conditioning coach Greg Argust has resigned after receiving a promotion when Morgan Scalley took over. Sammy Mora, our good friend from Ute Zone, joins us now on a Monday. Hello, Sammy. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm doing great, Spence. How are you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time. Let's just start there. Any insight on what happened and how this kind of went down as Greg Argust has resigned this morning?
Honestly, I have absolutely no clue. I've been hitting the ground all day to see if I could find out any information about what's going on, but kind of came out of left field for myself and Dan Sorensen over at Ute Zone. But yeah, I don't know what to say because I don't have anything to say because I haven't heard anything about what went down and what happened and what led to the change.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Let's continue just with the news cycle of the day today. And I hate to turn the Brendan Sorsby story into what it means for Utah football to potentially win the Big 12 because I feel bad for the kid and I hope that he's able to kind of find some answers with what sounds like a pretty horrible addiction that may cost him his final year of eligibility. But the fact of the matter is, Will Hammond, who unfortunately we know rather well here, is coming off a torn ACL, and the other quarterback options really aren't great. There's no spring transfer portal. They've closed the loophole that allowed like Jake Retzlaff to leave BYU and land in Tulane. Texas Tech will enter the season with the quarterback room they have. What did you make of the news today, and what do you think it means for the Utes?
Yeah, well, first of all, I totally agree with you. Like, I hope that, Sorsby gets the help that he needs. That's never, addiction of any sort is never fun to deal with. But it's one of those interesting things because it's like, on one hand, you kind of think, maybe the NCAA will finally, buck up and do something and show that they still have some sort of control over, the NCAA or over college athletics as a whole. But then on the other side of the coin, I'm like, well, the NCAA has proven time and time again that they just don't have any weight anymore behind these things that they want to do and stuff, just with how college athletics as a whole has changed so quickly. But I mean, they've been waiting for somebody to make, the example of what happens when you break these types of rules. Obviously, there's been like smaller cases, like the basketball one that happened, I think, around this time last year. There was the Iowa State backup quarterback who got banned from college football for doing similar betting and stuff. But those were minuscule stories. This is like a massive story. Like, it was all over Twitter all today. It was all over ESPN, all over every single outlet. So it's going to be interesting. I think Texas Tech's in a very interesting place. You mentioned Hammond coming back from the ACL tear. He did, if I read correctly on social media today, he's begun throwing again. So there's a possibility that he's back, but how is his mobility coming off that ACL tear? There's a redshirt freshman on their roster that I know people are very excited about, and then their backup another quarterback they brought in from the portal is from Tulsa. So, like you said, they kind of have to roll with what they have right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because Hammond was electric versus Utah, but then again, most backup quarterbacks look really good against Utah, and they have for the last few years. So, but it's Texas Tech is now it's a very interesting thing. It's something that I'm going to be watching, over the next couple of months.
So let's do some draft stuff. We'll do some spring ball and kind of go from there, Sammy. For the first time in Utah football history, 2 players picked in the first round. Let's start with Spencer Fano to Cleveland at 9. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think it goes without saying the Browns need help literally at almost every single position, but to a certain extent on the offense, you can't draft all these quarterbacks and these tight ends and these running backs and these wide receivers and all these playmakers if you don't have an offensive line. And despite the concerns about his arm length, obviously we all knew Spencer, even though that was going to, some national people had him falling late into the first round. I just knew deep down, I knew he was still going to go in the first round because no matter where you play him, he has so much versatility. He has so much skill. He has, the drive and the passion and the fire to just put his head down and work, whether it's going to be at tackle, whether it's going to be at guard, whether it's going to be at center, because I've heard teams were looking at him at all 3 spots. So I think that's a big step in the right direction for Cleveland as a whole, because, maybe you can actually get some somewhat good quarterback play out of Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or whoever is going to start behind center for the Browns this year, because they can't do anything unless there's an offensive line protecting them. The guys around him, the wide receivers and everybody, like I said, can't do anything as well. So I think that, Cleveland has those stereotypes of not being a great organization to being drafted to, but if someone is going to turn it into more than what it looks like it could be, I think it's going to be Spencer. Spencer just has something special about him that makes me think he's going to thrive there.
He's going to have to put his big boy pants on quick. He's going to be blocking Myles Garrett in practice,
Yeah, well, if you really think about it, he's won up against quite a few first-round draft picks when it comes to playing at Utah throughout his career. So it's one of those things where iron sharpens iron, and if playing against Myles Garrett is what sharpens Spencer's iron to the best of his ability, then that's what he's going to do.
So Caleb, and it's interesting, Sammy, I've had a couple of analysts throughout the draft cycle tell me they believe Caleb's ceiling might be a little bit higher than Spencer's. Only time will tell, but he lands in New England at 28. What do you make of that?
I, first and foremost, really, really happy for Caleb. He's one of those guys that, at times it seemed like he was a fringe first-round guy, but like you said, higher ceiling kind of pushed him into that first round. The Patriots traded up for him, which tells me everything I need to know that, they might not have as much confidence in Will Campbell than they did when they originally drafted him. And, Will Campbell had his struggles last year. And so whether Caleb plays this year or he plays next year, I think that they got a good offensive lineman. Like, Caleb has just gotten progressively better year after year after year at Utah. Obviously, he redshirted his freshman year, started his redshirt freshman year, and then he played last year. So the Caleb from when he stepped onto campus is vastly different than the Caleb that Utah fans saw on the field last fall. But another situation that I think is interesting, like, he's not walking into a situation like Spencer is, where he needs to be a starter from day one. Like, if he is able to overtake Will Campbell, then he's going to be the starter. But at the same time, like, I think Caleb is not going to be one that's going to get discouraged right away from not getting playing time. And I think that he knows that. But I'm super excited for both of them. I'm happy to have been a small part of their journey, interviewing them and stuff like that throughout the years. I actually ran into both of the Fano brothers at Under Armour Next Camp last Saturday in Salt Lake, because their younger brother was competing, who's a 28 kid, was competing at the camp and stuff. So it's fun to be a small part of these kids' journeys, but I'm really happy for both of them, to finally, take that next step in their journey and their careers.
Dallin Bentley picked by the Broncos because, of course, 7th round in the NFL draft. I think he's the 5th Ute on that roster. What do you make of his potential of maybe sticking around and doing something special in pro football?
I actually was joking with people during the draft, and I said there's no way that the Broncos don't draft at least one Ute, because they seem to do it without fail every single year. At least one Utah player ends up in Denver, and I think it's like Utah East at this point, it feels like. But Dallin is another one of those guys that I think is really interesting, because if you take a look at his football journey, it's one of the more uncommon ones that we've seen. He started at Snow College, where he had never played tight end before. He came home from his mission, played there for a year, then transferred to Utah, missed his first year at Utah due to injury. Then you go to the 2024 season, and he's behind Brant, so he doesn't play a lot until Brant goes down. And then heading into this season, I think he had 2 receptions for 15 yards on his career. Expectations were very low for him, and people didn't know what he was going to do, but he really blossomed, and he really showed that he could be tight end 1 for Utah last year, second in the team in receiving yards by the end of the season. Just another all-around great guy. And, it's really interesting, because I think Denver's one of those situations where it's like he could stick, because they have so many different utilizations of packages and stuff with Peyton and stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, if he doesn't make it, I don't think that's going to discourage him. I think almost every single one of these Utah players is not going to be discouraged from not getting playing time right away. Utah's known for kids that want to work hard, kids that want to pull up their bootstraps, kids that won't take not playing for, they won't take it lying down, basically. So Dallin's an interesting case. I think he's I think he could do something potentially really good for the Broncos. So it's going to be fun to watch how he develops again.
It's always interesting to consider and debate whether or not a player would prefer to be drafted in the 6th or the 7th round or just go undrafted and decide to land with the team that he knows likes them. When Trevor Riley was drafted in, I think, the 7th round by the Jets, I sent him a congratulatory text message to which he responded in classic Trevor Riley style. No, I'm pissed. I did not want to be drafted. So I guess it depends on the player, but let's dig into some of the undrafted stuff. Logan Fano lands with his brother in Cleveland. That's pretty cool. What do you make of his chances to stick on that roster?
That one's I think it's very cinematic that they've taken every step in their journey together. They played high school ball together. They played at Utah together. Now they're going to be in the NFL together. I think that Logan's an interesting case. If Logan was probably 3 years younger and didn't have the history of injury that he had, I think he would have a higher chance of sticking. And that's not to discourage Logan as a player and stuff like that, but just looking at – that's the same thing how I feel about Lander. I know you'll probably ask about him next, but with both of them, I'll jump the gun on that one. But both of them, their injury history is the big thing that I think was limiting them, because they have the measurables, they have the skills, they have the tools to be impact players, but it's just a matter of if they stay healthy. Because for Lander specifically, if you look back, like the Lander of his freshman year is not the Lander we saw the last 2 years. And I think that foot injury that he had his sophomore year just really derailed things. And it sucks because he had the potential to be a day 2 guy at the linebacker position and stuff. And I think with Logan, it's the same thing. He had back-to-back ACL tears. He played through some stuff this year or last year that kind of limited him. So it's one of those things where if the injury history wasn't there, I think that they would both be drafted and in better positions. But at the same time, you got to roll with the punches. And I think that both of them are going to give it their all. Again, like I said, with when I talked about Dallin, it's one of those things, but I am excited. I do think it's fun that they're both on the Browns. I think it's going to be a good experience for both of them. They're Spencer, during almost every single interview during this whole process, talked about Logan and just how what he means to him and stuff. So I think it's really cool that they're spending time together at the next level now.
You did, not that you jumped the gun because you're good at this. You knew I was going Lander next, but you handled that. So let's talk about the 2 linemen, Jaron Kump to the Browns and Tanoa Togiai to the Commanders. What do you make of the potential of those 2 sticking?
I'm really I was actually really interested that Jaron went to Chicago. That was one of those. Jaron was one of those guys that, at least for me, he was a fringe guy. I didn't know if he was going to get picked up as a UDFA. I didn't know if he was going to get a mini camp invite, but I knew he wasn't going to get drafted because, again, like I said with Logan, it's age and injury history. I think that's a big thing with him as well. But Jaron is a leader. Jaron knows how to rally the troops. Jaron knows how to get guys to work towards a singular goal, and I think that's something that I don't think gets acknowledged as much as it should, especially in the NFL. And I'm not saying he's going to walk into that Bears locker room and immediately start being like a leader. I think he knows that he's going to have to work his way up and stuff. But Jaron's an interesting case. I was shocked when I saw that, but I was also really happy for him. Local kid. He played here I think he played at Harriman, I believe. Just 100% a local kid, a Utah kid who worked through everything and got to where he wanted to be. So that's where I feel with him. Tanoa, I had heard rumors that he could possibly get drafted, but it turns out the cards just didn't fall that way. I like the Commanders' fit for him, especially because, again, another team that has pieces at the offensive line but doesn't have a whole cohesive unit. And especially with a kid like Jalen Daniels, who is so electric as a quarterback, but he's only as electric as his offensive line allows him to be. But I think Tanoa could be a guy. I don't think he's going to be a day 1 starter, but I think he could be a guy that works into, that travel squad, that 54-man roster.
All right, away from the draft now. And look, we just in the previous 10 minutes broke down 4 linemen that are now going to try to play pro football. And obviously with Spencer and Caleb, they're a different level. I just got to ask you what you make of Jordan's task to not just take over for Jim Harding, but replace one of the most impressive units in the history of the program. Where are we at, Sammy, as far as new players coming in, transfer portal additions, recruits that are going to step in and fill these massive shoes that have been left by such an unbelievable O-line?
Well, I think the big thing is that the cabinets weren't completely bare for Jordan when he walks in. You know, you have Keith Olson, you have Zeraway Williams, you have Roger Alderman, you have Isaiah Garcia, you have Alex Harrison. Like, you have guys that, or Solotola Moya is another big one that I just happened to forget. All of those guys have played football for Utah. They haven't started, but they've played meaningful football. I think Keith is the big one for me, and I know over at Utah we spent a lot of time talking about Keith. He's such a versatile guy. Like, he's probably most likely going to end up playing in the interior of the line. That's where he played during the 24 season when injuries started to pile up. But Keith is so versatile. You can have him at guard. You can have him at tackle. He's a steady presence, and I think that he's going to be a big focal point of this offensive line this year. Zeraway is one of those feel-good stories that I think people need to just think about, because, like, yeah, he's good at football, but he's been through so many injuries and so many things, and he had to wait for a waiver to find out if he'd even be eligible for this year. But a big guy to play tackle, and, you know, people are probably concerned if Kelvin Obot doesn't play this year. I don't think that's an indication on Kelvin. I think that's just an indication on Zeraway and what he means to this offensive line and what he does. I don't think that means that Kelvin is not good or Kelvin is this or Kelvin is that. Like, Kelvin he's 18. He's going to need some time to, you know, get his body right, get into the position where he can play, where the game starts to slow down and stuff. But Zeraway is one of those good stories. You can put Alex Harrison in the same story. He needed a waiver to come back for this year. He's back. But obviously, there's no way to limit the loss that you have of losing all 5 starters up front. Like, there's no denying that. Like, I will be the first to say offensive line was one of those concerns that I had coming into spring. But, I mean, after watching the first 20-minute period we had in spring versus the last 20-minute period we had in spring, I can say that I did see noticeable progress for the offensive line, especially the ones. I think that this month of May, Morgan has talked about how important it's going to be for this program, especially the offensive line. And I think that, you know, if they can have a solid month of May and they can all get on the same page, I think that's going to that's just going to be a springboard for the fall. I think Cedric Jefferson, the Montana State transfer, he's going to do some good things this year. I've heard that, you know, there's a lot of the younger guys that are pushing as well. Ike Garcia is someone that I mentioned in passing, but another feel-good story of someone who's been through so many injuries and is finally in a position where he can compete for a spot on that 2 deep. I think that, you know, outlook of the offensive line, I'm still a little weary, but I'm not as, like, flat out, like, stressed about it as I was, you know, before spring ball started.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that to me is the number one question that needs to be answered as to whether or not Utah will have something to say about the Big 12 championship. So that's some good news. Let me ask you a couple questions that have been asked of me to get your take on, you know, Kevin McGivern as a play caller and as an offensive coordinator. You know, the word is he believes conceptually a lot of things that Jason does, but obviously his own man, his own guy. And, you know, Morgan joined the podcast a few weeks back and said as soon as there was an opening, that was his number one target. He didn't have to think about it. He knew that was the guy he wanted. What do you think the offense will look like next year? Will it be similar? What are the differences?
Well, I do. When you talk about Morgan saying that about McGivern, I want to add that I was at the women's clinic a few weekends ago, and we had a little, like, session with McGivern and stuff, and he, like, showed how to, like, watch film and stuff like that. And he talked about how, you know, Utah was a dream job for him and how, like, this was an opportunity he just didn't think he could turn down. So I think that the feeling is mutual between Morgan's interest in him and McGivern's interest in Utah. I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged because, you know, it's not very often you hear Utah being labeled as a dream job for someone who's on an offensive side of the ball, unless you're an offensive lineman or a running back or possibly a tight end. But for an offensive coordinator to say that, I think that's highly encouraging. But as for what this offense looks like, it's going to be really interesting because, like, at one point it felt like how Utah went all in on receivers, you know, getting Braden Pagan, getting Tyree Scholes, getting Ricky Johnson out of the portal. It felt like there was going to be a much more focus on the passing attack. But then when we asked Morgan about it a couple weeks ago at practice, he was like, I've never said that I want this offense to be pass first. I think that there was a misconception between what we saw in the bowl game and what he did in the portal, that it was going to be a pass first offense. I think he wants his team to be balanced. He wants this offense to be explosive and effective in whatever way it is. If they're being explosive in the run game, they're being explosive in the run game. But if they're being explosive in the passing game, that's where they're being explosive. So I think it's interesting. I think that, you still have Devin and Bird and they're dynamic athletes. You can't, I think Ryan Gunderson said you want to let the Wild Mustang be the Wild Mustang, but you also want to keep them on the path, meaning you want to let them make those electric plays with their legs, but you also want them to, be controlled and make some good plays with their arms and stuff. So I'm excited. From the little bits that we've seen during spring, there's some things that are highly encouraging about this offense. But again, practice looks a lot different than game. And we know that things change and stuff, because there were things that were thrown at us last year in spring under Jason Beck that we didn't see at all during the season, or there was things that were completely different. So I'm excited. I think the outlook is I'm excited for the outlook. I think there's a possibility that I don't want to be too bold, but I think that the passing attack is going to have a little bit more focus, instead of being probably like, what was it the last couple of years, like 70-30 run to pass. I wouldn't be shocked to see it more 60-40 or even 50-50.
So before we get to your latest for Ute Zone, let me ask you just kind of a general question about this new era, because if you haven't been following the news cycle, Sammy, Kyle Whittingham lives in Ann Arbor now. And ultimately, I went up to the Fan Fest, and it was a really cool thing, and Morgan had a really cool thing for us to go up as media members. It really is a much different – I'm not a vibes guy, okay? Give me results over vibes. It's a different feel in that building, and catching up with staffers, it's almost – and look, this is not a knock on Whit. It just feels like people are a little bit more enjoying their job in a different way. Like things just feel a little bit more relaxed, and Morgan's just more of an affable person than Kyle is. Like I said, when he hopped on the pod, he gave me – 30 minutes of his time during spring practice. I can't imagine Kyle would ever do that. What are some of the differences you've noticed now that Morgan is the guy?
I think you say you're not a vibes person. I am very much a vibes person. But I also understand vibes can't win football games. But the thing is if morale is high, I think that you're going to get better outcomes. And again, we don't know what this team's going to look like when adversity hits. That's something that you always have to deal with at least once in the season, is when something hits the fan and you just need to reel from it. But I think from our perspective, like you said, the staff is a little bit more loose, so to speak. And that's not loose in a bad way. It's loose as in, I think they're serious about their job, but they also know that there's some room to have fun, and there's some room to, at the end of the day, let your hair down and just kind of be free. I know Porter was with us at the assistant coach's availability, the last one we had a couple weeks ago, but some of these coaches just are just talking, and they'll just talk and talk and talk. And you used to not get that. It felt like pulling teeth to get answers out of some coaches in previous years, but they've been so open. They've been so transparent. They've talked about things. Heck, we had Morgan flat out admitting injuries that happened during spring ball. Kyle would have never, ever, ever done that, because Kyle's policy is we only talk about injuries unless they're season ending. And so you have Morgan mentioning that you have a couple hamstring issues. You have Mark Atuaya mentioning that Matiaki Halu got hurt and stuff. And so that was completely different, and that was something that was really eye-opening to me. And I know I talked to Dan Sorensen about it, and I said, this feels different. It feels lighter. It feels like a breath of fresh air has been injected into this program. Like at spring ball, you see the weekend of the Masters, they did that chipping competition. So there's different things that are happening that you used to not see. There's a lot more activity on social media, getting fans involved, having fans get to know these players outside of the game. And so I understand that these are all things things that don't impact winning on the football field, but to a certain extent, I feel like it's going to have an impact in a positive way, because these kids are knowing that they're more than just football players, that the fans love them more than what they do on the field and stuff.
All right, before I set you loose, early front runner for best name of all time, Tiki Teeples. You were able to catch up with him, the latest Ute commit. What should we know?
Very high on Utah. Very, very, very high on Utah. Utah beat out Texas Tech, Iowa State. Big offensive lineman, 6'4", 265 out of Arizona. 12 and a half sacks from the interior of the defensive line last year, which is absolutely insane to say from a nose tackle type guy. Again, another one of those, a lot of the recruits I've talked to so far this cycle have mentioned just Morgan and how ecstatic he is and how he just is so energetic and so passionate, and he loves the U. I think the phrase that Tiki said to me was, him and Coach Swan, they live and die by the U, or something like that. It was something along those lines. Like, these kids are buying into this culture early in the process, which I think is massive for this team. But his film is so fun. If you haven't watched his film, I encourage people to go watch his film. It's one of our favorites so far this cycle. But a lot of kids are talking about this culture, a lot of this RSNB culture that Morgan's pushing, and it's resonating. And again, we don't know if it'll pay off on the field, but as of right now, like, it's helping on the recruiting trail. I've talked to probably 15 kids already, and every single one of them just brings up that culture, that RSNB culture, and how it's not just words, that this is something that the coaching staff is actually living by. It's stuff that the players are living by, and it's turning a lot of heads, and it's opening a lot of doors. There's kids that are scheduled to visit this summer that would not have visited under previous coaching staffs that are now visiting just because of the work Morgan and this crew is putting in on the field.
Sammy, for our Ute fan listeners that are starving for Ute football and other Ute information, where can they go get all your work?
You can find us on utezone.com, part of the 24/7 network. It is probably the best community on the internet for Utah fans, as I have to say so myself. Lots of recruiting stuff coming out in the next 2 months. June is supposed to be a very big month for Utah football. Lots of official visitors on campus and stuff. But if you want to know what's going on the recruiting trail and you want to sound like a very educated fan in front of your friends, you should join us over on Ute Zone.
Sammy, thanks so much. It's always fun to catch up with you. I hope you're well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Okay, talk to you later, Spence. Thank you.
Sammy Moore, Ute Zone, does a really, really good job. You can also follow her on social media at S_Mora247. Porter, can you corroborate that the vibes are high right now up on the hill? Football building, spring ball. Are the vibes as high as Sammy says they are?
I think so.
Okay.
As you are, I'm a results guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it seems like folks are having fun and enjoying their time up there. I think that is often the case in the spring, though.
Yeah.
When there's no pressure, there's no game on Saturday, there's no loss to look back on. That does seem to be the case a lot of the times, but there is a different air, I would say, up there.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. As one staffer said to me, I don't want to say who it is. He said it's a breath of fresh air because Morgan wants to do these things and he cares that they're good. Probably a little bit of a shot on the guy that was here before. And again, you're not going to get me to be an anti-Wick guy. I'm not ever going to be on that train. That's my guy. I'll cheer for him forever. They are just different dudes. I know they're cut from the same cloth about how they believe football should be played, but as personalities, I don't want to say polar opposite, but they're much different people.
Oh, yeah. As you said, cut from the same cloth in a football regard, but I've never seen, nor has anyone ever seen, Kyle Whittingham dancing on a table at the facility. I've never seen Kyle pulling pranks on people at the facility. Those are both things I've seen from Morgan Scally. So,
yeah. Speaking of results, see what I did there? Game Day Men's Health, baby. All right, we have a new client on the show. They've been on the show for about 6 months or so. If you haven't taken advantage of their deal, now's the time. So it is cold today. It feels a little winterish today, but you're going to blink and it's going to be warm and it's time to go to the pool. Are you the dude that sits by the pool with your shirt on? Well, don't be that guy. And you don't have to be that guy, okay? Because summer's right around the corner. Game Day Men's Health can simply help your process of getting back in shape, losing weight. Maybe you need to lose a lot of weight, or maybe you just want to get into a little bit better shape. Well, they did it for me, okay, a couple of years ago. And the nice thing is, because I continue to work with them, I was in there a couple of weeks ago getting a blood test. I've continued to maintain the progress I made a couple of years ago. So Game Day Men's Health, if you've been working out and you're frustrated that you're not getting results, or if you're about to maybe start a workout regimen and you want a little assistance, they can hook you up. And right now they're giving you the very same deal they give me, which makes it super affordable. That deal is this. Number one, it is a free consultation with no obligation. It'll take about 15 to 20 minutes of your time. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com and then book that. Tell them you heard me talking about it. And not only is your consultation free, where they take a little bit of blood and then they go over your levels with you, and then they can recommend which of their products will help you meet your goals. For me, it's supplementing testosterone, and I utilize some of their peptides. They've got the weight loss stuff that you've heard about, semaglutide, tirzepatide, whatever else the new stuff is. But they're giving you 50% off your membership all year long, which makes these products very, very affordable. So GameDayMen'sHealth.com is where you go. Locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden. Free consultation, 50% off your membership all year long. Make sure to tell them I sent you to our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. All right, we'll catch a break. Don't forget, get to preview tonight's game. Roxy Bernstein stops by. The Mammoth back in action, taking on Vegas, trying to go up 3-1 in that series. We'll do a little RSL later on as well. We got a jam-packed show the rest of the way on a Monday afternoon. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Got Roxy Bernstein joining us. We'll call that about 20 minutes from right now. We'll preview tonight's Mammoth game. Maybe do a little college football with Roxy, as he's our buddy from the old Pac-12 days. Good stuff from Sammy Moore today. Enjoyed that conversation. Sam Bruckhouse for some NFL draft as well. It's the ESPN 700 Festival of Tees, powered by the Utah Golf Association, giving away rounds of golf from the best courses in the state. Listen to the Sean O'Connell Show from 11 to 2. Listen to this show from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700. Details on ESPN700sports.com. And we are sending you to one of my favorite tracks in the entire state. It's Davis Park. It's beautiful. It's up north. They do a great job keeping that course in shape. Text in to win right now, 877-353-0700, 877-353-0700. Give me one, since we just talked to Sammy from Utah, give me one newcomer on the Utah football team you're most excited to watch play coming up this fall. 877-353-0700, Davis Park Golf. Porter, did you catch any of the Zurich Classic over the weekend, the PGA Tour event that was played?
Barely.
So I only saw the final little bit. I'm not a huge fan of the team event, but have you seen any of the Netflix Full Swing, the golf show that Netflix has done?
I know I watched the first, like when it was big that first year. Are they still doing it? Are they doing more?
In fact, they just released, I think, the 4th season. I watched a little bit of the first one. I love it. I think it's awesome. And look, I'm a admitted addict at this point with that game. New clubs, struggling a little bit with distance control. We won't dig into my golf game on the show today. But I think it was either season 2 or 3, where they featured Matt and Alex Fitzpatrick. Now, Matt Fitzpatrick currently I don't know that anyone's playing better than Matt Fitzpatrick right now. I think he's already won 3 times. I think he became the first golfer from the UK to win 3 times before the end of April on a PGA Tour, if I read that correctly. So they featured these brothers, Matt, who again currently is just raking. I think he's ranked 2nd in the world behind Scheffler. And then Alex, his little brother, who just is not as good. And that's not an insult, because his brother's one of the best golfers in the world. But honestly, you came away from watching that kind of feeling bad for Alex. And if you've ever been a little brother, which I haven't been, I'm the oldest in my family, but there's this little brother thing where if your big brother's good at something, you kind of just want to be good at that too, right? Like we were all athletes in my family, and, I was a basketball player, so my little brothers wanted to be that. We were always playing basketball in the backyard, and, it was very clear that Alex badly wanted to be a pro. And from my vantage point, it looked very clear that there was no chance of that happening. All due respect. Like, you came away just feeling bad for this kid as his brother is shooting up the golf rankings. And over the weekend, an unbelievable weekend for this family. And I thought it was just a really cool scene. One of those things that reminds you that, yeah, this sports stuff actually is pretty cool and can really change people's lives. So their parents were there at TPC, Louisiana, and it was pretty good drama because they were getting pushed. They had to birdie 18 to win it. Matt ropes his drive, and then it's Alex's turn to hit his shot, and he hit a fine shot, but it found the bunker. He took out, I think it was his 9-wood, and hit it pretty well, but just found the bunker in front of the green. So they simply had to get up and down if they wanted to win the tournament. Now, if they didn't get up and down, it would have gone to a playoff. So Matt steps up, and actually when I saw him hit it, I thought he had thinned it. He spun it to like 3 inches. So all Alex had to do was tap it in to win the tournament. But I don't want to say like what a lot of the coverage is, what a great gift Matt Fitzpatrick just gave his brother. And certainly there's something there because Alex, this is, of course, the first time he had qualified, I believe, to play in a PGA Tour event because he won on the DP World Tour not that long ago. But as a result of the brothers winning their tournament in front of their parents, which was just so cool. Alex Fitzpatrick has a 2-year exemption to play on the PGA Tour. I mean, he's going to be in major tournaments. He's going to be in all of these incredible opportunities to solidify his place as a PGA Tour golfer. And Matt told this story after the round, where wherever their home club is, I think it was Sheffield, if I remember correctly, he said he would kind of be on the fringe area of the driving range, and he would overhear the members of the club or people that are playing approach Alex to ask Alex about Matt and never ask Alex about himself, because Matt was just rising up the ranks and Alex was grinding just to try to, make it in any way, shape, or form as a pro golfer. And when I'd heard that Alex, because I don't watch a ton of PGA golf. I watch more than I ever have, and certainly I'll watch the majors, and if the leaderboard is interesting on a Sunday in a random tournament, I'll watch that too. But I'm not grinding on DP World Tour Golf, so I didn't know what had happened with Alex, because I figured with that Netflix documentary, the Full Swing documentary, that the kid probably just wasn't able to make it. He didn't look like he had the game in that documentary to make it. And then I found out that he actually won on the DP World Tour, and then next to his brother yesterday, as a result of that win, Alex has achieved his dreams. And I talk about this all the time. It is one of my favorite things, and I was reminded over the weekend, not just with the Fitzpatrick brother win, one of the reasons I love watching the draft, or one of the reasons I love watching the NCAA tournament, is you see lives change in real time. You don't see that in very many places, where suddenly Spencer Fano is a millionaire, and suddenly Spencer Fano will have the potential to build wealth for generations. And suddenly Alex Fitzpatrick, after grinding for years and years and years, has a tour card and has a chance to make a ton of money playing golf if he continues to work and play well. And I don't know, maybe it's because I have 3 younger brothers. Seeing the brother tie there, and Matt kind of, after Matt hit the bunker shot within like 3 to 4 inches, knowing that they had just won and knowing that Matt had just helped his brother achieve this really cool thing, it added this extra layer of watching the parents come down to the green and watching Matt embrace his brother and realizing in that moment that he had helped change his brother's life. It was a really cool thing. And seeing a lot of these young players get drafted, the reaction of friends and family, when you realize all of the years of your hard work actually achieved the dream that you set out to achieve, because it's a rare thing in life. Like how many people really achieve the dream that they always had? Most of us that had any sort of premonition of being really good at a sport to make money at it ended long ago for a lot of us that actually played against pros. And when it comes to the grind it takes to get your tour card, our buddy Easton, who's a listener of the show and Nick fan like Porter and I, he does this really mean thing to me that during the media am tournament that they let us play the course before the state am, he always puts me with the best player there. It's embarrassing. So Easton, if you're listening, maybe stop doing that. Make Jay Drew do it. He's a cheater anyway. And last year he put me with Steele DeWalt. And Steele is a local golfer who played at Park City. I think he played at ASU. He was in Q school with like all the dudes that you see now. Scotty, JT, Morikawa, Xander, all those guys. And he actually qualified, played on the Korn Ferry tournament. And it was the first time I'd ever talked to somebody who went through that process. It is a grueling lifestyle for all of these players, not just some, all of these players. And 99% of them tap out somewhere along the way before they can ever make $1 playing golf. And for Alex Fitzpatrick, who has this unbelievable talent as his older brother, he could have tapped out years ago, and I don't think anybody would have blamed him. And to see the kind of culminate in the moment where suddenly Matt hits this bunker shot and Alex just has to tap it in, and boom, you're a PGA Tour professional. You are a player now. You are on the scene, and you have a 2-year runway to try to make sure that you maintain your status on tour, and then you do it in front of your parents. You know, sometimes doing this job, you're a little bit jaded when it comes to even like going to games. It sounds weird, but it's like going to games is part of the job, and you kind of do it, and you forget at times how lucky you are to be able to have the opportunity, and there aren't a ton of moments that really catch you off guard. The draft always does, you know, to see the reaction of the family, and that moment, I think, with Matt Fitzpatrick and Alex Fitzpatrick in front of their parents winning a PGA event was something that I found extremely powerful. I thought it was really, really cool. So, of course, as a result of that win, Alex will have an opportunity to play in the biggest and best tournaments in the world. If you missed it earlier today, Jason Batakiao from the Salt Lake Tribune is reporting that Utah's director of football sports performance has resigned. Greg Argust was given a promotion earlier this season. And actually, Greg sent out a tweet, finally here to stay, like a few weeks ago. I've been efforting some information. I don't have anything really all that tangible at this point. I've actually been told that Morgan, the thought is Morgan landed on somebody that he just liked better. I mean, from what I've been told, that's all there is. There isn't anything beneath the surface as far as some sort of, you know, behavioral issue with Greg. I don't know Greg at all. Again, he was just given a promotion and he has stepped down. So a lot of people behind the scenes looking for information, but kind of a random piece of news earlier today. We'll see who the replacement ends up being. Also, if you missed it, Brendan Sorsby, we started the show with this. Brendan Sorsby was the #1 player in ESPN's transfer portal. He played for Cincinnati for 2 years. He was a redshirt freshman at Indiana back in 2022. And he was the main reason Cincinnati was relevant at all. I mean, he was an awesome player. And when Texas Tech lands him in the transfer portal for a reported $5 million contract, Tech was instantly installed as a heavy favorite, not a favorite, a heavy favorite to win the Big 12. Well, Pete Thamel reported that the NCAA is investigating Brendan Sorsby for, quote, making thousands of online bets on a variety of sports via a gambling app. He was a Heisman hopeful this year for a playoff contender. He's thought to be a potential first-round pick in a quarterback class next year that's a little bit stacked with Arch Manning and Dante Moore and Sam Levitt and such. Well, he's checked into a residential treatment program to address the gambling addiction. And, you know, as I said to start the show, I have a hard time covering this with a sports angle because I feel bad for the kid. I think he's just going to get a ton of crap from people that like to hide behind their keyboards because the internet is where cowards go to feel brave. And I think he's just going to get attacked and judged by people. This is a sad thing. And I don't think there's a pathway for Brendan Sorsby to play college football this year. And therefore, it's the most likely outcome is his college football career is over. This is his 5th year of eligibility. And as a result of the new bylaws that have been put into place, this is it for him. He does not have another year available. And obviously, again, with the caveat of this is a human story, it's a personal story. What it means for the Big 12 is interesting to consider because Will Hammond, Texas Tech's backup quarterback, is coming off a torn ACL that he suffered in October. And Texas Tech themselves don't believe he'll be ready until week 3 at the earliest. Now, some of the reports are that he's throwing again. They do have a third-string quarterback that played at Tulsa. I don't know anything about him. a redshirt freshman. But look, if this was like a cornerback or a tight end or something, maybe it doesn't change your calculation. But if you're a Utah fan or a BYU fan, we shouldn't be celebrating anybody's tough lot in life. But it does change the way you look at the Big 12 Conference. It just does. If they're going to be without their first choice quarterback, a kid that was going to be not the favorite, but one of the favorites to potentially be in New York to compete for a Heisman Trophy and be a first-round pick next year in the NFL Draft, that's a big blow. And remember, the loophole that Jake Retzlaff found last year after he left BYU to go enroll at Tulane and be their quarterback and had a really good year, that's not allowed anymore. Spring transfer portal is gone. Texas Tech has no ability to add to the quarterback room. They're going into the season with what they have. So we'll see. There's no official ruling from the NCAA yet. I would imagine that part of the decision to check into this treatment program maybe is to show the NCAA you're taking it seriously. But if the proof the bets are out there, including one that Sorsby made in 2022 on Indiana, where he was a redshirt player, I can't imagine that this kid's playing football this year, but we'll have to see. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Going to bring in Roxy Bernstein coming up next to preview tonight's Mammoth game. Keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, history was made on Friday night as the first ever Stanley Cup playoff game was played here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the Utah Mammoth answered the bell. The fans were awesome. Energy in the building was high, and the Mammoth will try to do the same tonight, 7:30 Mountain Time, drop of the puck. Depending on how the early game goes, Philly and Pittsburgh. Roxy Bernstein, welcome to Hockeytown, USA, pal. How are you?
I'm just bummed I'm not there, Spence, to be there for the festivities tonight. And it's weird when we share the series with Turner. You just I parachuted in and did Game 4 of Edmonton and Anaheim last night after I was on the early part of the Utah-Vegas series. So it was a little awkward stepping right in the middle of a Game 4 of a series, but we do what we do.
Well, I'll tell you what, you actually kind of tipped us off about what you believed the Mammoth would be able to do to not just stay in the series, but maybe win it. What impresses you the most, though, about what they've done so far, leading 2-1, hoping to get to 3-1 tonight?
That they have stayed to their game, Spence. And look, Utah knows, or what Vegas knows what Utah does well, right? We talked about the speed the Mammoth have and the skill and the way they're able to rush the puck and create chances off that with their speed, with guys like Schmaltz and Keller and Gunther and Peterka and the way that they could skate. And it was an issue in Game 1, but Andre Tourigny seemed to figure something out, and their strategy in Game 2 and Game 3, they were able to generate those chances and get through the neutral zone, which they weren't able to do in Game 1. And it's a chess match. Tonight's going to be different, and I'm anxious to see how Vegas alters what they've been doing, because clearly the last two games, especially in Game 3, wasn't successful. Game 2 was there for the taking, right? It was tight, and Utah found a way to win it at the Fortress in Vegas. Game 3, the Mammoth dominated. Now the pushback from the Golden Knights, and I'm anxious to see how they respond tonight. And you talk to coaches, and I'm sure they feel this way in the Utah room. They know they're going to get a great effort from Vegas tonight, and that this is going to be the best effort that they've seen from the Golden Knights in this series, because what's gone on in the last two games. This is going to be a very tough game to win. I'm not saying Utah can't win it. I'm not. But it's going to be a difficult battle, and I'm anxious to see the adjustments that John Tortorella and the Golden Knights make tonight.
So it's always interesting, Roxy, to find out which players do not shirk from the moment and actually step up when there are bigger things at stake and the lights are at its brightest. And, you know, if there is a superstar player on this team, it's probably Clayton Keller. But the kid who's just impressed me, and I was down there on Friday night, is Logan Cooley, man. He has stepped up, couple goals, 1 assist, 3 points. And the other thing I like about him is almost every time he's on the ice, he's in one of the skirmishes, even though he looks like he's 12 and doesn't look like he could fight his way out of a wet paper bag. Like, I love what I'm seeing from this kid.
I think he is a superstar in the making. I am a huge Logan Cooley fan. The way he plays the game, it seems like his game elevates when the stakes are high. And he's done it in this series. Look, he scored the game-winning goal in Game 2. He has just been in the middle of everything. And that's what you need this time of the year. You talked about he doesn't back down from the challenge. He's willing to throw his weight around. And you have to have that chip on your shoulder. You need to play with an edge this time of the year. And Cooley is bringing that. And his relentless work ethic. For example, the winning goal in Game 2 is a great individual play by Gunther to get to the net. And the rebound, and Cooley just out-hustled Jack Eichel for the puck. And Eichel lost Logan Cooley, and he scored the winning goal. And that's what you need this time of the year, is that extra effort. And Cooley's been bringing that. And the last couple of games, it's not just been him. I mean, he was the most noticeable Utah player in the first two games. He was the best player on the ice, Spence, to me. And in Game 3, he had company. He was terrific in Game 3. But other guys started to show up to the party as well. And, for example, Dylan Gunther, his laser that he had in Game 2, the goal. But you can see the rocket for a shot, how quickly he gets rid of it. It was a deeper contribution up and down the lineup in Game 3 that you need this time of the year in the playoffs.
you had referenced during our last conversation after game one, because the thing that really stuck out to me is that Vegas was and continues to try to bully the Mammoth, but you had referenced that's not necessarily their MO as far as who they were in the regular season, maybe not known as one of the more physical teams in pro hockey. Do you think they try to change that up tonight? Like, what sort of adjustments will John Tortorella make tonight to try to get them back home, not down 3-1?
Well, you have a chance to really grab a stranglehold of the series tonight if you're Utah. And if Vegas happens to pull it out, all of a sudden it becomes a best of three, and it shifts back to the Golden Knights, and they have home ice advantage. I think they may need to make some adjustments. For example, I don't think Vegas can win this series with some of the guys that aren't giving them some contributions. For example, Tomas Hertl throughout his career, Spence, has been a really good playoff performer, especially when he was in San Jose. He's at 1 point in this series. He is, to me, if not the best, but either the top two face-off guy for the Golden Knights. He's a player that needs to respond. They need to get something out of Hertl tonight. In a lot of ways, I think John Tortorella may be using him wrong. I would put him with Mitch Marner because Marner's a playmaker. Marner's not necessarily a goal scorer, where Hertl's a shooter. And I would put those two together. It would be a nice combination, but they're keeping Hertl on the third line. And then Marner, they put him on that nuclear line, as they called it, in the first game. And then halfway through game one, John Tortorella adjusted, put Barbashev up on that line, and dropped Marner down to the second line. The combinations right now for Vegas, especially in game three, weren't working. They need to adjust that. It appears they're tinkering with their lineup. But those are players, look, Hertl's got to get going. Jack Eichel needs to shoot the puck. He's got one goal in the series. He's taken 7 shots in 3 games. And also, I think Marner needs to shoot the puck. He's taken 4 shots in the 3 games. These are 2 highly skilled, high-level players, and Vegas needs to get more than 1 combined goal out of that trio of Hertl, Eichel, and Marner.
I thought they were going to pull their goalie on Friday night. I'm sitting there because the Mammoth only had 12 shots, and they scored 4 goals. So I love the way you broke down ultimately – some of the lineup adjustments and what Tortorella can do as it pertains to maybe making some changes to mix and match players that are playing together. But Carter Hart's got to be better, doesn't he?
He does. And look, you need at least 1 or 2 games in a series that your goaltender needs to win, right? Where they're just flat out stoning the other team and standing on their head. And if you need to get those type of performances. And Carter Hart, he's been the guy that John Tortorella has leaned on since he showed up and took over for Bruce Cassidy in late March. He immediately installed Hart as his number 1 goalie. But keep in mind, the guy he's got backing him up has led Vegas to a Stanley Cup, right? Aiden Hill has been a playoff performer in his career. They need to potentially lean on him. And look, sometimes you need 2 goalies to get you through a playoff series. Hart was, I thought, really good. Not great, but really good in the first 2 games. Struggled in game 3. I would anticipate him bouncing back tonight. He's too good of a goaltender, but it's also a nice luxury, I think, for Torts that he's got Aiden Hill waiting in the wings. For example, if Utah were to win tonight and go up 3-1 in this series, I think we could see a switch then, and then Aiden Hill would take over for Vegas in game 5.
On the other side, Vejmelka's been really, really, really good. They had 30. Utah was outshot by 20 on Friday night. Vegas had 32 shots, and Vejmelka had 30 saves. And we saw it gold medal style. We see it almost every year. The conversation, Roxy, always, if you dig into the whole most important player in team sports, most important position in team sports, the answer is quarterback in football. But if there's another position you throw in that debate, it's a hot keeper, hot goalie, hot goaltender in hockey or soccer. They can directly lead you to wins and trophies. Tell me what you're seeing from Vejmelka.
He has just been the steady ship back there and the back end. And he has been so consistent all year. You worry, okay, is he being overused? Well, he clearly hasn't been, even though he's played the most games in the league this year. Karel Vejmelka has established himself as a franchise goaltender. And Bill Armstrong has clearly anointed him with Andre Tourney that this is the guy. Even though, for example, I thought Connor Ingram the last year in Arizona was playing at a high level. Now Ingram is struggling up in Edmonton recently, and he was lifted last night, and Tristan Jarry made the start for the Oilers. But they clearly invested in Vejmelka. He's the guy. I think he's got a bright future, signed a long-term deal for a lot of money to be the backbone of this organization. And they have talent in the pipeline. For example, the guy they took a few years ago, the 6'7" goaltender from UMass, Michael Hrabal, to me, is one of the best prospects out there for goalies. So I think Utah's got a real luxury of two goaltenders for the future, but Vejmelka's the guy of the current. And his save percentage is, right around .920 for this series. You are shutting down a terrific Vegas team. And Vejmelka, there's so much confidence this team has in him because of his play, and he's earned that. And they're as confident in their goaltender, to me, Spence, as any team is in the league with the way Veg has played this year.
Bill Armstrong made a really, really savvy move prior to the trade deadline. And really, I mean, look, if you're going to trade for Mackenzie Weegar, you're going to have to give up a good package. But he kept the majority of their young prospects and ultimately didn't give up any first-round picks. Weegar has 2 goals in the postseason so far, and he has really stepped up since the acquisition. It was a great move. Tell me what you think Mackenzie Weegar means to the Utah Mammoth.
He's a veteran presence back on the blue line. And Spence, he allows that decor to be lined up the correct way, right? You may have had a player playing out of position up on the top pairing with Sergachev that maybe shouldn't be there. And now they're aligned properly. As Mackenzie Weegar is a top pair defenseman, and you put him and Sergachev together, that is a great combination. And then you look down, and that allows players to just fill in their role and where they should be with this group. I think John Marino's had an excellent series so far for Utah, and he's playing with a lot of confidence defensively. And he's been critical to what they've needed to do. He's been an effective penalty killer. And when you're slotted in properly and you're not being asked to do too much, just control what you can control and stay in your role, that's paramount. And there is a nice mix right now. Look, the deeper you go into the playoffs, there's going to be some attrition, right? Injuries pop up. And I know Sean Dursey's been battling something, but he's not alone. Everybody is playing with an ailment right now. Nobody is 100%. But this team right now seems to fit the way when Bill Armstrong went and made that deal with Calgary to bring in Weegar, he had an image of what this team defensively should look like, and Weegar has helped make that happen. You bring a right-handed shot in, pair him with Sergachev, and that is a nice combo that you have as your number one D pair.
One thing's pretty apparent. These two teams don't seem to love each other all that much. A lot of talking, a lot of jawing, a lot of scrums after, the keeper's making a save, goalie's making a save, but no dropping of the gloves. We don't see that much in playoff hockey, do we?
You do on occasion, but the stakes are too high, Spence, right? Nobody, especially some of your frontline guys, you don't need them sitting in the box for 5 minutes. That's a big chunk of the game that you could be without one of your key players, and they're too valuable this time of the year. The pushing and shoving, look, every whistle and every stoppage, you're going to see the sticks come up, the pushing and shoving. It's the playoffs. That happens. And you're looking for an edge and trying to get it under somebody's skin, and maybe the other side will do something stupid. It's about hard-nosed, tough competition. You may take a mental note, and if somebody takes a run at you, a cheap shot, you're not getting retribution right now. Hockey players have long memories. They know. They'll wait for their opportunity. It's not going to come in this playoffs. But maybe next year, all of a sudden, all right, regular season game, and they have the opportunity to get a little revenge on somebody, they may look to do it then. It's too important for the team, and you need to put the team above your personal issues, and I think that's what I've seen from both teams in this series. It's been physical, it's been tightly contested, but it's also been smart in staying within the rules.
Saying in pro hockey, the rivals manifest themselves come playoff time, and this only the second year the Mammoth have been here. They're spoiling this fan base already with this fun little playoff experience. Vegas, by proximity, is the closest NHL team to Salt Lake City. And prior to the Mammoth's arrival, a lot of Vegas fans. In fact, I don't know if you saw this, but Ryan Smith, SEG, it was really cool. They did a jersey exchange, and I'm told about 2,500 people showed up at the Delta Center to exchange their Vegas jersey for a brand new Mammoth jersey. A really, really smart idea by them. Could we be seeing, Roxy, the start of what potentially is the answer to the question, who is the rival of the Utah Mammoth?
Well, in a lot of ways, even though they're not in the same division, because it is the first playoff series, it is Vegas. You mentioned the proximity. It just stinks that, okay, one team's in the Central, one team's in the Pacific. Now, they play 3 times in the regular season. But we all know how, look, it's what, a 5.5-hour drive, right? Maybe if you're stepping on it, you could get there in 5 from Salt Lake City to Vegas.
Or 4.5, according to my friend.
Road trip. See, at least I try to hang around the speed limit and not really obliterate it. But that's what makes for terrific rivalries. And you need to have the villains, right? And Vegas has become the villain because of this playoff series. And rivalries are born in the playoffs, especially in the NHL. And people get under their skin, right? Like, for example, Ivan Barbashev, who is, I think, a terrific playoff player for Vegas. He seems to be getting under the skin of Utah people. But he's not alone. And you need to have that. Keegan Colasar is another. Look, he's not a household name in the NHL, but he's certainly become on the villain list for the Utah Mammoth fans because just the way he plays in that hard-nosed style. And working for the San Jose Sharks like I did, there was a number of rivalries that developed over the years because of the playoff battles that the Sharks had with teams. And it's going to stick with Utah fans. This is the first series in the playoffs. And especially if Utah can win the series, all of a sudden Vegas looks at the Mammoth very differently as well. And they'll look at him as the team that knocked us out of the playoffs. And then that's where I think you have a real rivalry where there's contentiousness on both sides.
John Tortorella has been around forever. He coached my Rangers for a while. He coached the national team. I think I read that he's 5th among active coaches when it comes to.
He's basically been everywhere, Spence.
Right. Yeah, 5th in active coaches in postseason wins, I think is what I read. It's been interesting.
And he's been on Team ESPN as soon as this year.
Yes, indeed.
He left us to coach Vegas.
Yes, that's right. It's been interesting to hear him talk about this new assignment. Like his last gig, I guess he was coaching a bunch of kids. And he said this time around, like last time I was a teacher, this time I'm a guidance counselor. I'm just trying to not get in their way. Well, he might have to step up and do something a little bit different. But what do you make of the way Coach Torney has kind of matched up with him with not even near the amount of experience?
I think Andre Tourigny has really managed this series well so far. That the preparation to understand and to realize what Vegas is trying to do. They expected them to do this. They did it. And that's a credit to Bear and his coaching staff, that they're able to figure that out. And the chess match between him and John Tortorella. And tonight, which I think is significant as well, when you're on home ice, you have the last change. So if Andre Tourigny wants to match lines, let's say the Eichel line comes out for Vegas, Bear can put the line out on the ice that he wants to counteract that, or the defensive pair to make sure, for example, when Eichel's out there on the ice, if he wants to have Sergachev and Uyghur out there every time that Eichel's on the ice, for the most part, he's going to be able to do that. I like the way he has managed this team, that they're staying within themselves, that they're playing disciplined, hard-nosed hockey, which you need to do in the playoffs. And on the other side, look, John Tortorella understands, and here's the one thing that you can't take for granted. The success and the playoff runs that Vegas has had. They have been there. They have done that. And they're not going to be intimidated by the moment tonight. Down 2-1 in a visiting team on the road against in another team's barn, the moment will not be too big for them. And I think they're going to come in with that confidence knowing that they have faced this before. And it's a veteran team with guys that have won cups, and the resumes speak for themselves. That's going to be the challenging thing. And if you get tonight, all of a sudden, trying to get the fourth one, that's going to be the hardest one to get.
was not sure exactly what to expect when I was going down to the game on Friday. It was really cool. My dad and son were in town, so 3 generations at the game, which was fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. It was a great experience. But I was so impressed with the feel in the arena. The game ops was awesome, and the fans. It felt like we had hockey here for 30 years, Roxy. The home ice advantage for the Mammoth is real, man. That building was awesome.
They were ready for the moment. The Utah fans understood what the task was, right? To bring the energy, get there early, get in your seat, and make that building loud like you feel the roof is going to blow off the Delta Center. And they answered that call. And I would anticipate that happening again tonight. And look, with the struggles the Jazz have had in recent years, it seems that the sports community in Salt Lake City is aiming for a professional team to make a run. And at some point, the Jazz are going to come back and put it together. We know that. But right now is the time for the Mammoth to thrive. They're new. The first year was exciting, but now they've taken that step forward. And they're building on last year and what they accomplished and getting close but not getting into the playoffs. This year they pushed through, and the Utah fans have clearly responded, and it is awesome to see the hockey market grow there in Salt Lake City.
Well, and the other interesting dynamic that's kind of presented itself, Roxy, as you referenced, and look, the Jazz they're going to be better next year. Like, it's been a rough 4-year stretch, but there's a sentiment across the landscape of our sporting community that in the modern day and age of the NBA, outside of some colossal luck and the unfortunate part of pro basketball, like we always talk about the Spurs dynasty. Well, it helped that you drafted David Robinson at 1 and Tim Duncan at 1, and now Wembanyama. You've got Dylan Harper, who was 2. You've got Stephon Castle, who was 4. Like, you have to have luck if you want to build a championship in pro basketball. And we just call it how it is here. It's been a tough market for NBA players as far as and it's not just NBA players like, you know, the people you would think of. The Jazz couldn't keep the white guy that likes to play video games when he's done with work. Gordon Hayward left. Like, everybody leaves, okay? Like, it's not just a certain type of NBA player. But there's this sentiment that with the way that Ryan and his group have built this thing, NHL players seem to look at Utah as a place that is appealing to them as opposed to the NBA where it's just been tough. So I think they've done a good job of capitalizing on this moment of ambiguity with basketball fans and real excitement. Like, maybe this thing can actually breed a Stanley Cup parade in Salt Lake City someday.
Well, the symmetry in terms of the way the teams need to be built, it's similar, right? When you get these high picks in the draft, you need to hit. And going back to the NHL, right, you look at the picks that Utah's been able to turn into frontline players, guys like Gunther and Keller, that you need to have those top picks when you have them hit if you're going to build a franchise, because you need to have that depth. And, for example, look how the Avalanche were built, right? McKinnon, Makar, these were all high picks that hit. That's what's got to happen. Look, this is a good year to have a lottery pick in the NBA draft, right? With the talent crop, this freshman class this year that's coming into the NBA draft is as good a group as we've seen in a long time. And with DeBonsa and Peterson, and you go down the line, and Boozer, of all the tremendous freshmen, and Caleb Wilson that are coming into the NBA next year, it's a good year to be in the top of the NBA draft. And if you happen to win the lottery, this could be a franchise-altering decision this year. Not every year is like this. You might have 1 or 2 at the top, but there's no guarantee even those picks will hit at the top. For example, look when the Warriors had the second pick. James Wiseman, how'd that turn out for Golden State?
Yep.
Right? You need those picks to hit. And for Utah, if you get the number 1 pick, let's say, and DeBonsa's the guy, then all of a sudden you pair him with Markkanen, and all of a sudden you've got the real making of a team that's heading in the right direction. And that's what I think has got to happen for Utah. For example, I know a lot's been made about the tanking in the NBA and making sure you keep their pick. For example, the Wizards did it right this year. They didn't want to lose that pick because of the trade, and it was protected, and now they're keeping their pick. And this is a year you want to make sure you have your pick. But this could be maybe a franchise-altering draft for the Jazz, depending on how they do in the lottery.
All right, before I set you loose, one of the things I referenced when we were debating the playoff matchups, I'm like, well, you really want to avoid Connor McDavid and the Oilers, but they are in trouble against Anaheim down 3-1. Let's get irresponsible for a moment, Roxy. For the hockey fans in our market, how broadly should they expand their horizons? Can we honestly say this team might make it to the Western Conference Finals? Because the Avalanche, I feel like they're ahead of everybody else. But how wild can we get with potential expectations?
First off, look, it wouldn't shock me anything, right? The way playoff series can twist and turn depending on health and lucky bounces. For example, the lucky bounce Anaheim got last night that has Edmonton on the ropes. That all of a sudden the Oilers are down 3-1 in this series. But keep in mind, Spence, the Oilers have the best player in the world. And granted, he might be banged up. And he's clearly, in fact, I'm not even going to say he might. He's clearly not 100%. But they have him and Draisaitl, and I'm not going to rule them out at any point, even though Anaheim is rolling right now. But they know how to win this time of the year. They've been to the Cup final each of the last 2 years. There's a handful of teams that are down 3-1 right now. You look at the Penguins Flyers, which is just about to start. Edmonton's in that position. Of those teams that are down 3-1, I give the Oilers the best chance to come back. They're going to have 2 home games if they can keep winning. But they just know how to get it done this time of the year. Could Utah get through them or Anaheim? Absolutely they can, because Anaheim is rolling. They're flying, and they're in a similar position to Utah in terms of all the young talent and offensive firepower that they have. But you can't put the horse in front of the cart. You have to keep rolling along. You can't look too far ahead, because if you do, all of a sudden it'll come back and bite you.
Yes, sir. Roxy, good stuff, man. Appreciate the time. Be well. Have a good week. We'll chat soon, okay?
Anytime, Spence. Have fun tonight.
It's our guy, Roxy Bernstein, calls hockey for ESPN. We knew him and still know him, but back in the day, Pac-12 buddy. Want to let you know that Red West is back October 16th through the 17th, featuring artists like Ella Langley, Shabuzi, Sam Barber, and many more. Sweet. Tune in daily for your chance to win 2-day passes to Red West. More details at ESPN700sports.com. All right, we'll catch a break. Do a little RSL coming up on the other side. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Why would we be playing Creed on this program on a Monday? Any hints as to why we would be playing Creed?
Probably because we're trying to, bring the program to a higher status, a higher place. Maybe inflect a little bit of Christian values to the program,
Okay.
and rock out.
Yeah.
All three of the above.
So we're doing RSL this segment, right?
Oh, yeah, that's why.
I didn't get the rundown you gave me just said RSL, so I didn't get an update on the guest. Can I guess who it is?
Yeah, you got it.
Tony Beltran.
Almost.
Kurt Schmidt.
Tony was ready to go, but he's got some prior obligations. More important, higher obligations.
Kurt Schmidt.
You're going to have to go higher in the
Jason Christ, president of soccer.
The hierarchy
ops.
here.
President of soccer ops, Jason Christ.
One step above.
Steve Starks.
Almost.
Denz, the old RSL blogger, Denz.
I'm not sure I'm familiar.
Our next guest knows who Denz is for sure. What's up, Trey? Hey, bud.
Spence, I appreciate this intro. Glad to be here.
You weren't ready. You weren't ready for the Denz drop, were you?
No, that's a blast from the past for sure.
What about RSL FM? Can we get that person on?
Yeah, it's still a mystery, isn't it? What happened to that account?
I don't know. Did you get your Twitter back yet?
No,
Yeah.
no.
What did you do?
Somebody tried to hack it. I reclaimed the proper email for it, but now when I try to log in, it puts me in this like spin cycle of two-factor authorization, and I just don't have time to mess with that. So
Your life
a
is
little unfortunate.
just a constant adventure, isn't it, Trey?
Yeah, it's a pretty rewarding one.
I like hearing that. Are you back from Los Angeles?
Yeah, we got back about midnight last night to the cold and the rain, little aggrieved and disappointed in the result. And now we look ahead to Portland on Saturday afternoon.
So let's start with the PK. On Sam, what was that? 85th minute. It looked that looked a little. I don't know. I hate to just put it all on the refs because I thought overall, LA probably deserved a result, even though there was some good attacking play. But tell me what you saw with the PK and what the reaction was in the locker room afterwards.
Yeah, I think was obviously the officiating was a hot topic with Pablo, Kurt, Jason, and the players post-game, and I think it's fair to say that, and I think Pablo handled this very well in his post-game media session, is all anybody wants is consistency, and I think what was particularly infuriating about the call on Junka in the 85th minute was just that it was extremely soft. I mean, there's contact, but there is that type of contact. It's just typical in every game. And in this particular game, much more violent contact had gone unadjudicated, basically, uncalled. And so for that very, very soft 50-50 challenge to go against us after 85 minutes and a couple very, very clear examples of shirts getting pulled. Aiden Hazarkani battled through one of those to set up the RSL goal right at the end of the first half. Obviously, everybody was still extremely upset that Victor Olatunji gets taken down on a breakaway in the box in a, what was that, 30th minute, I think, 35th minute, where, that's a penalty kick and a red card for denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. And there's no whistle. There's not even a foul. I mean, he got wrapped up around his waist, taken down. He got the defender Garces had his, legs around Olatunji's legs and scissored him down. it was a pretty violent play. So, when you contrast the non-call there with the gift to LA, I guess, there are a lot of people that thought the scriptwriters wanted to celebrate the Kobe Jones statue unveiling with 3 points for the Galaxy, who probably may have deserved it in the first half, but not in the second.
So was the Gozo goal, was that ultimately determined an own goal?
Yeah, Gozo, the Hezarkhani play, Gozo takes a nice shot. It goes off the post and then hits the back of the diving keeper and then trickled in. So technically it's an own goal, but, I think Gozo and Aiden deserve full credit for creating that opportunity, obviously.
So was Pablo given a yellow? Did I see that? Was he given a yellow card?
He was. He was given a yellow card right around that penalty decision, 85th, 86th minute. And, I guess he probably should have gotten one at the end of the first half when he was just absolutely going ballistic, and rightfully so, for the non-call on the Olatunji play. But, for coaches, if you get a certain accrual, I think, your third yellow card, you get a pretty light fine. So, Pablo usually gets a couple a year.
Walk us through the changes and ultimately kind of the motivation. It was weird not, being off for a couple of weeks, then 3 games in a week. So what were some of the motivations with the lineup changes?
Yeah, no, Pablo's talked a lot about this too. So 3 games last week, big 4-2 win against San Diego at home, disappointing 0-2 loss to Miami at home, and then you go to L.A. Pablo did make 4 lineup changes. Philip Quinton, who had been hurt for the previous 2 games, he came back in at right back. Juan Manuel Sanabria came in at left wing for Catranas. You did have Aiden Hezarkhani start in place of Morgan Gilavogi, and then you had Olatunji up top in place of Solons. And, Solons and Morgan and Catranas had played, I think, every minute of the first 2 games. So just trying to get some fresh legs off there. And, Pablo is always very conscious about, who can come in for the last 20 or 30 minutes and make a difference. And I think clearly Morgan and Sergey did that. But Victor's a different type of striker. Aiden's clearly a different type of playmaker than Morgan. And just looking for a little bit of spark and spread those minutes around, because I think Pablo would tell you he feels like we've got 15, 16 guys capable of starting in this league. But to your earlier point, when you only have 2 games in a month and then you have 3 in 8 days, and he talked about this a little bit after the Miami game, on top of the emotion of the moment and the circus that Messi brings to town, there is a mental fatigue and a physical fatigue that just comes having these games in such quick succession. So, the hope is that the guys learn a little bit about themselves and how to behave next time they're on that big stage, and maybe things are a little sharper and a little less nervy.
So the Messi experience seemed to be all that everyone hoped it was going to be. Is that fair to say? Take us a little bit, Trey, behind the scenes in the week leading up to that game, what it was like for you guys to get ready, maybe some of the special security situations, how you have to prepare for an event like that. And then now that it's behind you, how do you guys feel like it went?
Yeah, good question, Spence. I think, the feedback I've gotten from fans, media, staff, everybody is that other than maybe the weather, which was a little iffy, and then the result, obviously you want to win and get 3 points, everything went extremely well. I think in many ways better than expected. And, the Messi circus is something unlike anything I've ever really experienced. When we went down to Miami 2 years ago, we played them. They were in kind of this temporary stadium. It feels claustrophobic because there is so much security. There are checkpoints and protocols for how you move around a building that are 7 layers deeper than a typical Major League Soccer or even, NBA type of event. So it's just a lot of extra. And this is part of why we messaged, excuse me, to our fans so intently to get there early, right? Weeknight games in Sandy are typically a late arriving crowd, a lot of traffic. We sold almost 22,000 tickets. Excuse me. So there's just a lot of extra. And, Messi has his own personal bodyguard that roams the sidelines. Everywhere he's gone in his 2+ years in this league, there are people, and sometimes they're fans, sometimes they're staff members that should be used to being around world-class athletes. But, Messi's the greatest of all time. And so people lose their minds and they want to get pictures. They want to get autographs. They want to get a hug, right? And so, we did see one, I think, field jumper during the game and a few more at the final whistle. But by and large, I think I told our operations group that while we understood the need for all the extra protocol and it can feel claustrophobic and suffocating at times, I think it was handled and communicated so well and at such a level of detail in advance that I think people on our staff, me, myself, the media that came to cover the game, hopefully everybody felt that they were still able to do their jobs to the best of their ability, even if they couldn't use the same stairway or hallway or field access that we're typically used to. So all in all, a good event. And, again, you're walking away just disappointed to not get the full 3 points. I think, the team felt it. The locker room felt it a little bit. It's just different than a normal game. And so, you kind of go through that for the first time and you add it to your list of experiences. And hopefully next time these guys are in a high-profile game and, we'll have LAFC here. We'll have Vancouver here. Hopefully we'll have more than a couple playoff games here where these guys can utilize that experience and rise to the occasion and get the 3 points.
Any of the shine of the bright start of the season, is any of that worn off after a couple of straight L's? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a marathon. It's a long season, as you know. We'll have another 3-game week here in a couple of weeks. I think we'll be a little more prepared for it. The last couple of years, I think we are 4 wins, 8 losses, and 4 draws in the 3-game weeks. No, 3 draws. So, we haven't done well. I think everybody still feels this is a significantly more talented team this year than what we had last year. The leadership that I saw in the locker room post-game from Justin Glad and DeAndre Yedlin, talking openly about what the right way and the wrong way to handle the disappointment and the referee situation is, not only publicly, but also within the league protocols, because I think the feeling in that locker room, Spence, is that we've had several VAR type of decisions go the other way. And I think anybody that's been around sports as long as you have and others have, the hope is that these things kind of even out and there's no formula and there's no defined timeline. But I know a lot of people have done a lot of research about penalty calls and penalties awarded and all that kind of thing. And we have been on an extremely short end of that stick for probably the last 4 or 5 years compared to many, many other teams. To use an NBA example, the Lakers shoot 400 more free throws every year than the second highest team in the NBA. It's that kind of insanity. And look, the Galaxy have had a couple down years, but I think when you look at that locker room, you look at the way Gozo and Aiden Hazarkani and Diego Luna and Sergei Solons and some of the younger guys in that group have performed yesterday and Wednesday against Miami. The results aren't there, but the process, the performance, everybody still feels good that we're on the right track and we are going to be a top 4 team in a very difficult Western Conference this season.
Where did you get the Lakers shoot 200 more free throws than any other team in the NBA? Where are you digging that up from, please?
I would say that's probably a Tom Haberstroh investigation.
All right, we're clipping the sound, and I'm sending this to Tom because I feel like you're just a jaded Nuggets fan upset that your team's about to lose in the first round of the playoffs.
The Nuggets have no one to blame but themselves, Spence, for the lack of heart, fight, and pride that has been on display.
Does it end tonight?
No, they'll win in 7.
They will not. Okay. Well, I guess Ant is out, right?
Ant is out. DiVincenzo's out. But unfortunately, Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson are also out. The Nuggets look old, man. They don't have the athletes that you need in the modern NBA.
Are you ready to admit that Jokic is just a European Kelly Olynyk?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
He's still the best in the world.
But Rudy shut him down, right?
Rudy has had a phenomenal series. I didn't know Rudy had it in him.
Okay. Well, look, as the Dylan Brooks of MLS executives, I just really appreciate your time on the program today.
That's the meanest thing you've ever said to me.
Thanks for the time, bud. Be good. We'll chat soon, okay?
All right, Spence. Talk soon. Thank
All right,
you.
Trey Fitzgerald, RSL, after a really strong start to the season, has suffered 2 straight losses to Miami and then LA over the weekend. They're currently in 6th place, just ahead of Colorado and 1 point behind Minnesota. But they do have a game in hand over Minnesota. It's going to be Portland coming up. I believe that's an early kick. That's right, 2:45 on Saturday at America First Field. The weather's supposed to be spectacular. You can go to rsl.com for single game ticket options and season tickets if you'd like, if there's any left. All right, before we catch a break, new client on the show. And their owner, Shelly, did a really cool thing for me. She allowed me to go through the 6 treatments that they're offering you at Wasatch Medical Spa. Okay, so it's brand new technology, first to the market here in Salt Lake. It's called Apex RF. It's a non-surgical, drug-free treatment. It's no pills, no injections, no downtime. And it helps with erectile dysfunction if you're suffering from that. But the thing about this technology is regardless of your current situation, it improves that as well. So if you're thinking, well, I don't really deal with that. It's not just for ED. It helps with that, but it also just improves the overall experience, even if you're fully functional. Okay. So I would highly recommend it. And Shelly has a staff of 8 really nice women, and all of their husbands went through this treatment. And the bottom line is the women are the ones that are left most satisfied. This is a family-friendly show, so I will leave it there. And as a result of them being a client on the show, they're giving you 50% off your first session, and you get a 30-minute free consultation with no obligation. She put me through all 6 of her sessions. It's very relaxing. It's very comfortable. There's no pain. And I can promise you that you will be satisfied. And again, family-friendly show, so I'm going to leave it there. Go to WasatchMedicalSpa.com. WasatchMedicalSpa.com right now. Experience the next level of men's performance. Wasatch Medical Spa. Again, tell them you heard me talking about it. 50% off your first visit and a free consultation with no obligation. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The 5 o'clock hour of the program is next on ESPN 700. I wonder what Scott Stapp is up to these days. Playing a little Creed to send you out on this Monday afternoon with a little inspiration, a little emotion. Want you to feel something on a Monday. Maybe you had a rough weekend. Maybe you're going through some things. Maybe life hasn't turned out the way you thought it would. Well, Scott Stapp is here to comfort you and remind you that the arms are still wide open. Any idea what Scott Stapp is? Maybe they're still touring. I don't know. Was never a big Creed guy myself, but they sold a lot of records.
I actually do believe I saw something in the news recently about him, back to the Sorsby stuff, struggling on some front, addiction-wise.
Oh, okay.
Went into counseling. He's now back on tour, so Scott Stapp is back.
Shout out Scott Stapp on a Monday afternoon. Look, man, I know some of our listeners don't like what a music snob I am. I'm readily willing to admit when I'm incorrect. Like, look up real quick, how many records did Creed sell? And if they're still touring, they're still doing the thing. It's that cotton candy afternoon strip club rock stuff that I just can't get with.
They have sold over 53 million albums.
Yeah, like Puddle of Mud did a documentary on Netflix. It was something like the most hated band of all time. Those guys made a grip of money. You know, I believe She Hates Me, I think, is the song that Puddle of Mud was most well known for. Again, not a huge Puddle of Mud guy. So, sorry to our listeners that love Creed and Puddle of Mud, like Trey. Just not my thing, that's all.
That's fair. I'm with you.
But popular.
We've talked about it. My old man was like a Creed, Three Doors Down, more so like the 80s rock. But then those guys stopped touring, and you had to pick up something. And yeah, it was that like early 2000s. I don't want to even say grungy because that's more Nirvana, more of the Soundgarden. But yeah, the Creed, Three Doors Down, all these bands that I think were like trying to be Pearl Jam.
Yes.
And I just don't think did it very well.
Everyone for a few years was trying to be Eddie Vedder because Eddie Vedder has almost a perfect rock and roll song, or excuse me, a perfect rock and roll voice. Never a huge Nirvana guy. I was always more of a Pearl Jam guy. Not that you had to choose one or the other, but those were the two like Seattle bands that everybody loved. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Scott Stapp has always been cosplaying as Eddie Vedder, and it's not near as good.
I'm gonna agree with you there.
Quick AI search. What type of music is Creed? And the first thing that comes up is Creed and Butt Rock, a 90s album review and genre discussion on YouTube. So it's known as butt rock, as in your gluteus maximus, B-U-T-T.
I haven't heard that one.
I've never heard that either. Let's see. Post-grunge, hard rock, and alternative rock emerging in the late 90s. Dramatic vocals, heavy guitar riffs, often faith-based lyrics. Often confused with Christian rock, but not necessarily mainstream Christian rock. So that's Creed. So we were talking with our guy, speaking of Creed, we had Trey on earlier. So without Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo, I mean, Denver's got to get healthy as well. No Peyton Watson, no Aaron Gordon. Gordy Chase, our guy, picked Denver to win the championship, and I want to say Howard Beck did too. Can the Nuggets come back from a 3-1 deficit, even though they're without potentially their best perimeter defensive player in Aaron Gordon? This has been an undercover, like, entertaining series. These two teams don't like each other. We got McDaniels, we got Jokic, we got fights. What do you think? Denver come back from 3-1?
I'm never going to pick a 3-1 comeback, but they're in a position where they can. And as you mentioned, health has a bit to do with that. The fact that they're in Denver tonight has a little bit to do with that. And when you're down 3-1 and you get that game 5, man, it puts pressure. It puts pressure on that other team. That's why it's kind of a dangerous spot, right? When you go up 3-0, you really want to win that game 4 because 3-1, 3-2, the pressure starts to change a little bit, and the momentum starts to change a little bit. And when you do that to a team that has, there is a debate on who the best player on the planet is right now, but in that debate is 100% that fellow with Denver. So they have an opportunity. They have a chance. I'll never pick a 3-1 comeback. But of any of the series, that's probably the most likely one to have that happen.
Trying to think about what Minnesota might need to play Mike Conley, big minutes. Bones Highland will probably need to step up because you're looking at Ant, who plays about 30 minutes a night. You're looking at Dante, who plays about 24 minutes a night. And Dante's a bigger loss than most people understand. There's something about that kid going back to college where he plays his best in the biggest moments. Entering that Final Four, Dante DiVincenzo was on nobody's radar. He was the Final Four most valuable player, even though he was the sixth man for Villanova. And come playoff basketball, he plays his best ball. I mean, he's 11 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. It doesn't jump out at you, but he's a good defensive player. So Dante, 24 minutes, Ant, 30 minutes. I would imagine they're going to probably start Bones Highland and maybe utilize Terrence Shannon Jr. a little bit more. They might have to play Mike Conley. Kyle Anderson will probably, former Jazz legend. Does Kyle Anderson get a tribute video when he comes back next year?
Probably not. But then again, we've discussed the low bar for trivia videos. I'll say this. I like a lot of times Kyle Anderson as a player. It just didn't hit here. I guess part of that is that he was here during a time when the Jazz weren't trying to win. But slow-mo, if you will, really left no effect on the court here. And I think also was kind of a smartass, so left a little sour taste in a lot of people's minds here. He hasn't done that anywhere else in the league. It was kind of interesting to see.
He was very honest about how little he enjoyed his time here with the Jazz when asked about it after.
And you got to respect a little bit of it because he wanted to play competitive basketball. Maybe next year.
On Denver's side of things, Aaron Gordon, 30 minutes a night, and then they're also without. They're missing another piece. So Aaron Gordon, 30 minutes a night. Cam Johnson has not been good for them all year. Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, Spencer Jones. But that's, it's a little bit of a net because Aaron Gordon's your best option on Ant, and Ant is hurt. The Ayo Dosunmu kid the Chicago Bulls blew that trade deadline in a way that's kind of unfathomable. So Denver, it is staving season. Spring basketball means staving season. So Denver's going to try to stave off elimination. And you know what, dude? I don't know how much you've watched. The Pistons are in trouble.
Yes, they are.
I don't know that they're losing this series, but Orlando's at home tonight. They're up 2-1. And this is the Orlando Magic team we actually thought we were going to see all year. They have been able to script the flip to the point where they may have saved their coach's job. So I'm not going out on a limb and saying the Pistons are dead, but the Pistons as a number 1 seed, this tonight for them might be their season.
We talked about it a lot during the season where, are they for real? And if they are for real, what does that bring in the postseason? And what can a team who has not ever been in this situation do in the postseason? It's a rite of passage league, as we've talked about, and they are experiencing their first, as a unit, their first postseason test. And I think it's just kind of proving that anecdote right, that if you haven't done it before in this league, you're not going to do it right now. You're going to have to go through at least a semifinal, conference final type run before we really take you seriously in the NBA playoffs. Yeah,
Jamal Mosley, I think a lot of people thought that he was just going to lose his job. He may have saved his job with the way they played. One of the things that really was lost during some of their regular season struggles, look, Paolo's their best player. They make the move for Desmond Bane to bring in a big vet on the wing. Franz Wagner means a lot to them. I think he missed 35 games this year. And in the playoffs, he's been awesome. 16 points, 6 boards, about 4 assists. So, yeah, Orlando has finally looked like the team that we thought we'd see all year long. And on the other side, J.B. Bickerstaff and Detroit, really outside of Cade, they haven't really been able to get much from their bigs. Jalen Duren has been bad. Isaiah Stewart, first of all he wants to do is fight everybody. He's not a great player. They made the move for Kevin Herter. He barely plays. So Detroit kind of fighting for their lives tonight as well. I don't think we really even need to talk about the Thunder Suns series. That is over. They're already up 3-0. But the NBA playoffs, man, so far have delivered. So we got a triple header going on tonight. Let me give you the up-to-date, hey, where can I watch this deal? Pistons Magic about to start on NBC or Peacock. Oh, NBC or Peacock has all 3 games. So there you go. You don't have to switch around. So Pistons Magic in a few minutes. Thunder Suns. After that, your late night game will be T-Wolves and the Nuggets as the T-Wolves are trying to close it out. Tomorrow, the Knicks have shown a little life. Karl Anthony Towns has actually woken up. So we'll see if the Knicks can get by Atlanta at MSG tomorrow. That series is deadlocked at 2 games apiece. Celtics, I think, will just put the Sixers out of their misery, and I think the same thing with the Spurs. They'll take care of the Blazers from a local interest basketball standpoint. The Utah Jazz will be relevant again on May the 10th, on Mother's Day, when we find out where they are going to be drafting. Don't forget, Tusk's up, baby. Mammoth tonight, 7:30 drop of the puck. You can watch that game on ESPN. Sadly, there's no radio coverage. But the Mammoth are up 2-1 in that series. They'll try to go up 3-1. Oh, by the way, a little love for the ladies. The Utah Royals won again, this time in Seattle, 3-0. They're tied for second place in the NWSL after a pretty disappointing year last season. But they're much improved. All right, there you go. Jam-packed show, man, today. So much going on. I want to remind you that tomorrow will be episode 5 of my podcast with KUTV called Reality Check with Spence Checketts. Please support that, subscribe, all the things we ask you to do. Our buddy Nick Olachek's going to stop by to do some Mammoth. So, of course, you'll hear that on this show as well. Porter, what else will our listeners hear on a Tuesday edition of the program?
You mentioned it. Nick will stop by talking some hockey on a Tuesday. Dave Fox of KUTV talking sports.
Okay.
I know. Okay. Zach Harper.
Nice.
For the NBA Daily Assist, and our guy Chris Camerani in studio for an entire hour.
Still one of the most underrated moments in the history of this radio show is asking Dave to choose a white rapper to play for his hit and him choosing Robin Thicke.
I don't even know what to say about that.
So good. Did you see any of his weekend ski videos he's releasing on his socials?
I missed it.
Selfies as he's skiing with some sort of techno track in the background.
It's just the best.
Quintessential Dave Fox. All right, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Sam Bruckhaus, Sammy Mora, Roxy Bernstein, and Gerald Fitzgerald III. For any of the sound you missed from the show, the website is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then for what we do in this space, 4 hours every afternoon, check out the podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. So go to your preferred podcast catcher, find us, give us a rating and a review, follow along, say nice things, give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed, like Scott Stapp promised in the song Arms Wide Open. That's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Monday evening. We'll talk to you on a Tuesday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can catch it right here. Oh, man. On ESPN 700.